We got quorum now.
Evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming back on time. And we will now resume proceedings in Finance Committee. We were considering the appropriations to the Minister of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs. Please be seated. We will now turn to appropriation EGA 6, Secondary Education Services for $23,813,988 on page 195. Are there any questions? 196, my apologies. EGA 6 on page 196.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McLean?
I still want to know when was the last time, who is on the inspectorate now, school inspectorate? When was the last time? The end again? That's why we agreed to do that?
Mr. Miller?
I just have one general question on the Clifton Hunter High School. The people on our side are still waiting to hear when and how will the Clifton Hunter High School be utilized as a hurricane shelter if needed, and what is the process?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the Chief Education Officer to address that question.
Mr. Chair, obviously the decision to open shelters is not within our remit, but based on the most recent hurricane exercise that we held across government, it's very, the gymnasium at Clifton Hunter High School is designated as a hurricane shelter, and we did, in that exercise, talk through the fact that it would be used as a hurricane shelter. So in terms of when it is activated and at what point it is activated, under what circumstances, I am not able to fully address that as to whether it is activated in all such events or only at a certain stage, but it is certainly a designated shelter as far as we're aware now, based on the discussions there. Yes, sir.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, part of the original intention, as I understood it, of the Clifton Hunter School was that certain facilities could be accessed by the community after school hours. How much progress is being made on that aspect of it?
Through you, Chair, we have just had a comprehensive approval in terms of our use of facilities policy. So there is a rental schedule and a process already in place now for the use of school facilities, and that does include Clifton Hunter as well.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I got a flyer, unfortunately I didn't bring it this morning, from the Aiden Mile Primary School on Friday night about swimming classes that might be conducted there, but it is $20 per hour per student. Is that being run by the education department, or are you renting out the swimming pool facility to a private company who is then allowed to charge? Because I can't think of 10 children in our side that can afford $20 an hour for swimming lessons.
Through you, Chair, we have made arrangements with an organization to rent the facility to use for swimming lessons. We are not currently conducting extracurricular swimming lessons for the general public, but there is the possibility of the primary schools using that facility for swimming lessons, and that would be free of charge if done through the school.
How much are these people paying to rent the pool per hour?
I would have to consult, and I don't have the numbers with me, Chair, but I will ask our facilities manager, who may be able to get that information. We certainly have it on file, but I don't have the information with me.
Mr. Chair, through you, if it is acceptable to the member, we can provide that information in writing if necessary.
Ms. Waller, during what hours would they provide the swimming lessons, those that are paid for?
Chair, I don't know exactly what hours are currently available and what the current schedule is, but it would be completely outside of school hours. So it wouldn't conflict in any way with other uses of the school. All non-school uses of our facilities are approved only after making sure that there is no conflict with approved school activities, and that would include more broadly activities by other schools. So schools always have the first priority.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can the Chief Education Officer say which organization this is?
Chair, I really don't remember the name of the organization at the moment, but we can. It's been some time since the agreement was reached, but we can get the information.
Is there a swimming, through you, Mr. Chairman, is there a swimming coach at the Clifton Hunter School?
Ms. Waller, can you read what was there given to you? I think that's an answer to a question.
Certainly. Yes, certainly, Chair. It's the pool's used on Saturdays, and it's the TI Swim School is the information that I've been given. In terms of a swim coach, there is no swim coach per se, but we do have PE teachers, and the students do utilize the pool. I have seen that myself to their great enjoyment.
Mr. Chairman.
So it is used on Saturdays by TI Swim School.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
So therefore, who would provide the students with free lessons during school hours?
Chair, that's done through the PE classes, and the students at Clifton Hunter are accessing the pool through their PE classes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, who's TI, please?
Mr. Tritt, you got your answer.
Who's TI? The TI swim. What's TI?
Mr. Chair, I'm so afraid that's all the information that I have at this point. I don't know who the principals behind that organization are.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, you were asking a question when she was going to give a response, and then Mr. McLean.
It is also my understanding that even when the Northside students want to use the Clifton Hunter pool for after-school program, that the parents have to pay.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, we have it's very clear in the policy that school use of facilities, any use by the Department of Education Services, by the Ministry of Education, comes under, there would be no fee attached. It's done through the school. So if there are any issues about that, please, we would ask that they be referred immediately to the department for clarification. The rental of facilities is managed through the facilities unit at the Department of Education Services, and we're very clear on that mandate.
Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, when is it going to be, the pool at Clifton Hunter going to be made available to the primary schools? In particular, I'm talking about Easton and Buddentown, Northside and Easton.
Mr. Chair, we are open to that being a possibility as early as the start of the new school year. We need to make the arrangements for it and make sure that we can accommodate it, and the scheduling needs to be organized. But we're very open to that possibility from the start of the new school year.
Is she saying this is the first, though, that it has been made known that the pool is available?
Yes, sir. We will be working with the schools to make sure that they are aware of the accessibility of the pool.
Mr. Chairman, we tried this before, and we were told no. I have to take my kids, these 10 kids, up to Ocean Frontiers. I am confused, because if it was available, we wouldn't have to impose on the private sector. So I'm a little confused because the school has been open now for 4 years, 3 years.
Mr. Chair, Clifton Hunter High School opened, September will be 2 years ago. But I don't recall any request for use of that pool coming to the department for approval. So we will be happy to support that and work with the primary schools on that if necessary.
Okay. Maybe it didn't go there, Mr. Chairman, but certainly I'll try to make an effort to get the PTA to make the application. Mr. Chairman, the other aspect of this school that I recall quite vividly was that they were going to try to do adult education there after school. Is that a consideration?
Mr. Chair, we have been working with the Ministry of Education to discuss the opportunities to introduce adult education. We have taken some preliminary steps in that direction, and we've been asked by the Minister of Education to look at possibilities for the start of the new school year. So we are very much working on that. There are some resource implications, of course, but we are very much looking in that direction.
Mr. Bush, you have a question?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. McLean, you had a follow-up? Well, Mr. Bush, he is indicating that he has.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I knew there were some people on your policy crew that had a problem with competitions. Secondary education services, are your policies now in line with the national sports policy that has been unveiled to the country by the sports ministry? Are we all on the same page now?
Through you, Chair, we've very recently had some meetings that involved some staff training as well to try to make sure that there is much better alignment with what's happening in sports along with what's happening in the PE and in education. So we're definitely working in that direction, and it is our goal to have that kind of alignment so that we have a shared vision and practice for our PE classes and for sports in our schools.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we can clearly say now, as Ben said, that the education policy on sports are now in line with the sports policy from the Ministry of Sports.
Through you,
Are we
Chair.
getting there?
We are working in that direction. In terms of formal policies, we are working on the development of those, but we are very much working to align with sports, and we've had some very productive sessions in the last few months.
Thank you.
Mrs. Suku?
Just going back to what you said earlier about the adult education after hours, is that definitely something that will happen in September, or is it something that's just being looked at?
Through you, Chair, it is something that we're working to develop a plan for, sir. We have had some successful trial runs and pilots around adult literacy. What we are trying to determine now is what is both viable in terms of community interest and feasible for us to offer, where it is feasible for us to offer it. And that's going to be the work on that to develop a formal proposal for what we can offer in September is a project that we're undertaking over the next few weeks. So to give a succinct answer to your question, it is more than an idea, but it is not yet a fully defined plan that we have agreed with the ministry.
Are there any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, if the CI Chief Education Officer could tell us, I initially thought that they were talking about the community college, like how it does the civil service college, where, like up in Cayman and stuff, where the community college would provide all of the faculty and what have you, and offer these courses out in the eastern districts.
Through you, Chair, should UCCI wish to use our facilities in Clifton Hunter to offer classes, we would certainly be supportive of that, but that is not within the remit of the Department of Education Services, as you'll understand. We do have an existing agreement with UCCI to use other of our facilities free of charge, and we would certainly extend that to Clifton Hunter as well, should they seek to offer courses in the Eastern Districts.
Mr. Chairman, can the Chief Education Officer then explain to us, is it then, right now, the intent of the Department of Education to provide the adult education services?
Through you, Chair, the discussion we're having with the ministry is to look at some of the qualifications which we're already offering very successfully in the secondary schools, look at making those available to the adult population in, for example, English and mathematics, and for people who need lower level classes, literacy and numeracy, to allow them to access those examination classes, but also potentially some of the more applied subjects that we have had requests from the public to offer. But as I said, we are still looking at what the interest might be and what the feasibility is on that.
Okay.
Mr. Suku?
Are you planning to consult with the NWDA to find out what the priority areas should be in terms of what classes you offer?
Through you, Chair, we have already had some consultation with NWDA and worked with them. They've identified to us some areas where they have concerns and they see a need in their client base, and that would certainly be form a key part of our discussion.
Are there any further questions? Ms. Waller, what is a inclusion officer?
Chair, we have posts, inclusion specialist posts, and those are persons who work with students and have training and experience in working with students who have typically emotional and behavioral problems, which prevent them accessing the full range of mainstream education without that support.
How many of those do we have across the country?
At present, we have 9 across the country.
And they're distributed how?
They are concentrated in secondary education, but we also have 3 posts that are shared to support primary schools. Each of our secondary schools has an inclusion unit within the school that includes SciFec, as well as John Gray, Clifton Hunter, and Lehman Scott. So the first point of support is always to be able to support those students within their existing school environment. Where that then proves impossible, we also have a primary behavior unit and a secondary behavior unit, which are also staffed by inclusion specialists, but where students can get more intensive therapeutic and specialist support.
Thank you.
Mr.
Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the Chief Education Officer can tell us whether or not it is true that all Spanish exams have been suspended and students didn't take final exams this year?
Chair, all external examinations in Spanish have gone ahead. There's been no suspension of any of those.
Okay. Who does the IT at Clifton Hunter High School?
Chair, there's a IT staff. There are a number of IT teachers at Clifton Hunter High School.
Oh, the information technology stuff for the school, the hardware of it and stuff.
Chair, my apologies, I misunderstood the question. That's the infrastructure for our schools is managed through Mr. Steve Dirksen and the Ministry of Education. They provide that service for us, and I would respectfully refer any questions about the technical side of things to Mr. Dirksen, if you would permit.
Mis-
Mr. McLean, would you restate the question so that he can, and before you answer, if you could give your full name and title. Thank you.
My question is the infrastructure at the Clifton Hunter. Who manages it? Who maintains it?
Yes, my name is Stephen Dirksen. I'm the ICT manager for the Ministry of Education, Employment, and Gender Affairs. The ICT at Clifton Hunter High School is outsourced to a company called ITS, and it is we have an SLA with them where they support the end users, and they provide a technician on site, and all of the hardware and the software is managed by them and monitored by the Ministry of Education.
And you said that was ICS?
ITS, Cayman Limited.
Is it not possible to manage this from in-house?
No, my staff, we have a staff of 7, and our area of responsibility is quite large. We are in charge of all the sites and all the schools, and we have, in addition to the 20 sites, we have over 2,000 PCs and laptops. We have, in terms of number of users, it's probably one of the largest networks in the island. We have over 5,000 users with the students. We have 600 teachers. And so my staff are assigned to all the other primary schools and John Gray and in Cayman Brac. But the new high school in Clifton Hunter, because of the constraints on hiring, we decided to outsource that site.
So that's the only site that is outsourced?
That's correct. We do have some SLAs with companies who help us with some of our management of our servers, but in terms of the end user support on the ground, our staff manage the other sites.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if, first of all, how much it costs to do that, and compared with hiring 2 or 3 more people, what would be the benefits?
Well, in terms of Clifton Hunter, the SLA is $9,848 a month, and this involves everything from the end user support in terms of all the PCs and the laptops. It also includes all the management of the servers and the infrastructure there, including the wireless. So we found that this private sector partnership has worked out quite well for us, largely due to the constraints on hiring in terms of across the civil service. We've found that these private sector partnerships are quite valuable to keep costs down and keep the size of the staff reasonable.
So we're paying $100,000 a year. Have we had any difficulties with response from your contractors?
No, the response has been quite positive at the school in terms of both the on-site support as well as the remote support. The feedback we have gotten has been very positive.
Do you know how much it costs to manage all the other schools? How many of this we have? 11?
We have 20 sites, 17 schools, and my output involves managing the ICT in all those sites. In terms of, I think that most of those comes under, a little later under MEG 6.
But this was put out to tender, right?
Yes, it was, yes.
And this was the most, was this not the, this was the cheapest one
Yes, this
to
was
do
the-
it?
Yes.
Mr.
To you, how much do you pay one of your technicians?
The salaries range from 35,000 to upwards to 60,000 per year.
You could have hired 3 people for the same price of which this was outsourced at the bottom of the scale.
Well, the primary issue with Clifton Hunter was the complexity of the site in terms of there's a lot of additional technology there. In addition, there's salary and pension and Synico, so the total cost would be more than that.
Mr. Bush?
Mr. Chair, through you. Do this ITS Cayman Limited, is there any staff that has shares in this company?
No, there's not.
Thank you.
Mr. Tibbetts?
Mr. Chairman, I was just, forgive me, listening to the conversation, and I wonder if the gentleman could just repeat what the monthly cost is to provide this service at Clifton Hunter. I think it was 9,000 and something.
9,848.
So that's nearly $120,000 a year. My question, and this is just because curiosity is at me now. On the one hand, the question has been asked to you about the possibility of maybe hiring 3 people to do this job. And you quite rightly pointed out that there are additional costs, which means health insurance and pension. Has any exercise been gone through to look at the entire operation of that nature with a view to possibly looking to privatize that section of it?
Sorry, Mr.
And comparable costs.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat the question?
Mr. Chair, if the member wishes, I would wait until it comes up where he speaks to the salaries of individuals, which is another.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I mean, at this point, obviously, I was going to suggest that if we ventilate it now, that we wouldn't
That's fine.
re-ventilate it again.
I can wait until
on
then.
EGA 10, where it comes in under support services, that's where we actually.
Fair enough. Let us proceed to the vote. You have the other question, Mr. McLean? Okay.
I believe I may have asked a question earlier, and I believe I did it. I asked it wrong. That's why the Chief Education Officer I didn't get the response that I needed, that I was thinking of. When I asked about the Spanish teacher, was it was supposed to be internal exams that weren't done?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of internal examinations not taking place, but I can certainly investigate that.
What it was that the Spanish teacher was on vacation or off sick, something of that nature. And
Mr. Chair, I am aware that we had a situation at Clifton Hunter where a Spanish teacher was off work for a period of time, but my understanding from the principal was that cover had been arranged internally for that post. But I will certainly check that out. In any case, that teacher has been back at work now for some little while, so there would have certainly been an opportunity for exams to have been held.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? If not, we'll proceed to the vote.
I was going to ask about that teacher. There was another one, a teacher, Miss Harris, or something like that. I think that. What is the status with that situation?
Through you, Chair, the teacher in question is back at work at present.
Okay, they are, without any repercussions.
Chair, there was an issue, an HR issue, which was dealt with through the normal processes and resolved with the teacher in question.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me ask this question now. How many teachers have left out of your high schools to go to other schools, Caymanian teachers?
Mr. Chair, I don't have that figure with me at present. I am aware from the high schools, off the top of my head, about 5 teachers, but I would be prepared to research that and respond with a accurate figure.
Mr. Chairman, there's really no need to respond with the amounts because one Caymanian teacher leaving is too much. And she says she will leave off the top of her head about 5. What was the express reasons why these teachers were leaving in general?
Mr. Chair, if I could, my apologies. I was thinking about teachers in total, not Caymanian teachers.
But I asked Caymanian.
You did, sir, and I apologize for that error, and I misspoke. I would have to check on that because at the moment, I would want to check on the information.
I can appreciate not having at your fingertip the amount. My information was more Caymanians than that, but be that as it may. But you would have a knowledge of the reasons why Caymanian teachers are leaving, the reason they express why they're leaving.
Through you, Chair, as I mentioned earlier when we were discussing primary education, one of the concerns that we have had repeatedly from teachers is that while the lack of increments, annual increments or performance-related increments, it has applied across the civil service. It is particularly challenging in the field of education where increments are the normal standard international expectation as a way of rewarding successful teachers and encouraging them to stay in the classroom. While in the past it was the case that pay in public schools tended to be considerably higher than pay in private schools, we have been advised that there are now situations in which teachers in private schools are actually paid more than teachers in government schools, and that has created great challenges for us. The increment system is still available in some of the private schools.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I understand that is a more recent thing, and as I understand it, it's marginal. It's extremely small, something like $50, $75 more. However, this exodus of Caymanian teachers started long before that came up on par, a little above. And if they were leaving and going to private schools for less pay, then that says to me that the profession is what they want to be in. It has to be something else that is driving them out, working conditions and the likes. Mr. Chairman, can she, the Chief Education Officer, comment on that, if that was anywhere in the considerations that she heard?
Mr. Chair, there is no question that there are issues in teaching in a large public school with a comprehensive intake that make that job very demanding. And there are aspects of teaching in a smaller private school, particularly in a selective school, which may be easier and contribute to the decision that teachers may make in terms of where they choose to teach.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, you had a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the Chief Education Officer could outline for us the policy with respect to, and this is related to salaries again. I have had a number of teachers come to see me about what they perceive as the gross injustice of the system, the measures, if I may call them that she outlined with respect to non-increments. Caymanian teachers who have gone away and obtained master's degrees or some postgraduate qualification and come back and in financial terms don't have their new qualification recognized, but at the same time we continue to recruit teachers from elsewhere and pay them significantly above what the Caymanian teacher was earning. This is an issue I have taken up with the minister. It's an issue I've taken up with the deputy governor. So far I've gotten no result whatsoever, but whatever has to be done must be done, because I am aware at the moment of close to 9, I think the number is 8 or 9 teachers is the list I've been given, Caymanian teachers who are seriously considering leaving the public service. These are leaving. Those that have gone are gone, mainly because of the salary issue and because of their feeling of not being treated fairly when compared to the teachers who are recruited from overseas. So I wonder if the Chief Education Officer could comment on that and to say to the Finance Committee what it is that needs to be done, what it is that we can do to have this injustice addressed. As I said, I've spoken to the Deputy Governor at some length about it, and I'm going to continue to press for some resolution of this issue, because it is pointless, really, for us to spend, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars to train Caymanian teachers, to have them come and then leave the public service, many of them going off in not, if they were going to be teachers, it wouldn't be quite as bad, but many of them get sucked into private firms to do HR or other related jobs, and in financial terms it's good for them, I suppose, but in most instances that I'm aware, it's not really what they plan to do with their lives, and it certainly is a tragedy for the country in terms of their loss as Caymanian teachers.
Mr. Chairman, before when we were asking what can we do, I mean, do they not know what or how much this is, and simply vote it and make sure that it is the right people are therefore have the right salary adjustments?
Mr. Chair, through you, just before I ask the Chief Education Officer to answer, or the Chief Officer to answer the question posed by the Premier. Just want to reiterate for the Premier and other people's benefit the fact that I too have been advocating for looking at this particular system and have had these dialogues with Deputy Governor, and it's clear that the government is looking forward to seeing the proposal of how to address this concern this year, because we really do need to get past these concerns that seem to be an issue and is causing a real strain on our system with respect to losing our Caymanian trained and qualified teachers who, by going to the private sector, obviously, as the member has outlined, is showing a demonstration that they want to stay in this field. And so it is something that obviously, as Minister of Education, from the very get-go, I've been advocating for as well, and I look forward to hearing the plan that the commitment was given by both the Chief Officer and the Deputy Governor, that they would be coming forward with some plan of action to deal with that this year.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez, you're going to take the question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the Minister, one of the key action points that has been agreed, and we are preparing the Ministry to work with the portfolio of the Civil Service and the Office of the Deputy Governor on, is something that was announced by the Honourable Minister in her budget address, and that was to request a salary review for teachers this year, to undertake that. And we have had an initial meeting with the Deputy Governor, not just to look at the salary review, the issues about the review of the actual salary, but also to use that as an opportunity to look and have a detailed review of any other inequities across the system affecting individual teachers. So we're hoping, as an outcome of that exercise, that some matters will be identified. Of course, the question will be the cost of dealing with the findings and to make it right. So as a result of that review, there will be some proposals coming and the costing of implementing those. So that's something that should be happening quite quickly. The other thing I would like to speak to is in terms of shedding some light about where we are and what has contributed to this, to the issues with teachers not being able to advance from their initial point placement. Just by way of context, when teachers are first appointed to the system, they are allocated on the L grade based on their years of teaching experience. And we have a rough guide. According to the number of years of experience, they're appointed to certain points. There is some scope to negotiate beyond the initial point based on additional expertise. And of course, if our teachers are coming in newly qualified, without the additional expertise, they will end up on the initial point, and then if they stay in the system, that's where the issue comes, because we have no opportunity to be able to progress them. And we talked about solutions, and what is unfortunate, Mr. Chairman, is that in the PSML, appointing officers have the authority to negotiate and grant within grade increases. That was established for the reason of recognizing that you do need to reward staff as they get additional qualifications and so on. And there was actually a pay policy guidance that was issued by the portfolio of the civil service that talked about how could you make a case for that to happen. Unfortunately, in 2010, as a number of personnel-related cost efficiency measures were implemented across the service, that ability was taken away. So there was actually a mandate that to say that chief officers, appointing officers could no longer make those awards. And that was really, as I said, an efficiency measure. So unfortunately, because we're unable to do that, that's prevented the service as a whole, not just for educators, but the service as a whole, to be able to recognize and be able to reward individuals as they get additional qualifications, as they gain additional experience.
Mr. Miller?
You say that people are fixed on grades when they're hired. You normally hire a non-Caymanian teacher for what, 2 years or 3 years?
The normal contract period is 2 years.
Do the non-Caymanian teachers get an opportunity to renegotiate salary? Or are they, if they get a contract renewal, is that the original salary? there's none negotiated upwards?
The teachers on contract, if they're offered a further contract at the end of their 2-year period, there is no salary negotiation. And if I think in terms of increasing salaries at that point, that is not an option. I know we do not practice it in the ministry, and the CEO has just confirmed that she has never undertaken that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's one of the measures that was introduced by the Deputy Governor as well, to say that as part of the efficiency measures. If that isn't the case, certainly we do not do that as a practice for equity purposes.
And what happened before 2010 when the restrictions were put on by the Deputy Governor? Were they allowed to increase before that?
Again, the practice was not for that to happen. The law does allow for the scope for that to happen, but as a practice, that doesn't happen. It is a new contract, and when I say there's scope for that to happen, it's a new contract, and at that stage, there's a possibility of negotiating. But as a practice within the ministry and DES, we've never engaged in that practice.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller, Mr. McLean.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the Chief Education Officer, Chief Officer can tell us, when we recruit from overseas, are they engaged on equal terms with their Caymanian counterparts?
Through you, Chair, in terms of the guidelines that the Chief Officer referred to, those apply equally to Caymanian and non-Caymanian staff. So the answer to that is yes. As she said, there is some scope, not very much, but some scope for negotiation, particularly if it's an area of scarcity, that applies to both Caymanian and non-Caymanian staff.
Mr. Chairman, I like that word scarcity, because it appears like the Caymanians who come to me, like to the Premier, are complaining about that same thing, that they are treated differently, and that flexibility that is available is applied to those who are coming from overseas.
Through you, Chair, I think there is relatively little flexibility if we are hiring someone with no previous experience. But for experienced candidates, Caymanian or non-Caymanian, there is a very limited range of scope for negotiation. And as I said, we have engaged in that negotiation with, at first, appointing to a post. We don't have that flexibility while a person is, after a person's already employed, with both Caymanian and non-Caymanian staff.
Okay. Here are some of the things that I've heard, and it might be good for your own edification. If not, make it go through one ear and come out the other one. I ain't gonna suffer from it. Things of the fear to speak out whilst in post. Fear of repercussions from wherever, whether it's the department, the ministry, it doesn't matter. They fear that. We know how Cayman is. We're small. Everybody's going to hear it. So whatever we do, people are going to hear it. The other thing is, things like SSIO. Why is it that Caymanians can't be in those positions? Which would be a promotion. There is no Caymanian, and you can correct me, there are no Caymanians in those positions. And understand, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything against teachers. I believe teachers, there needs to be longevity in teachers. Who teach my child, me should be teaching my child. So I'm not trying to say this but the fact is that these are the kind of things that is causing your Caymanians to walk away from this noble profession. The recruitment processes, they all suspect that there is someone in the ministry who owns a company that the ministry is using to recruit. Now, when they want it raw, that's how raw it gets. Of course, they have no proof of that. I don't know who it is in England or anywhere else that you're using, but somebody needs to look at it. How do you recruit your people? Those are the questions that needs to be answered for the Caymanian teacher.
Who is Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. To respond, first of all, to the first point about the SSIOs, the Senior School Improvement Officers, we have 4 Senior School Improvement Officers, and in fact, 2 out of the 4 are Caymanians currently. We also have, at the current time, we have run a recruitment exercise for a current vacancy, and we have actively encouraged our Caymanian principals to come forward, and we are hoping that certainly we will be able to add to our group of SSIOs a third one as a result of this current recruitment exercise.
Mr. Bush?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. McLean, you were continuing?
Yeah. Can the chief officer tell us who these 2 Caymanians are and where did they come from in the line of hierarchy?
You want to give back to Ms. Tammy?
And more, Moses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the first SSIO that is Caymanian is Ms. Tammy
Banks DaCosta Hopkins.
She used to be Tammy Banks DaCosta, and now Hopkins. So she's the SSIO for the Sister Islands, and she is a long-serving educator, former principal. I should have the CEO give the details. In fact, let me do that and to give the background of the 2, because they are her staff members. So let me just turn around, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, just ask the CEO to give the background.
Mr. Chair, through you, Mrs. Rodriguez has already mentioned Mrs. Tammy Banks DaCosta Hopkins, who was formerly principal of Creek Primary School, a very successful school. And we also have Mrs. Barbara P.C. Banks, who is the SSIO with responsibility for special educational needs, who came to that post after long service in the education system as a special educational needs specialist.
And what about for those primary schools and stuff? Is there, and high schools, how many do we have? You said we have 4, and you're looking for how many more?
Through you, Chair, we have 4 posts. One of those posts has been vacated through a resignation by a non-Caymanian, and we're currently in a recruitment process for that post.
Okay, and those 2 Caymanians that we talked about, when were they put in place?
Mrs. Barbara P.C. Banks has been in her post for 3 years. Mrs. Tammy Banks DaCosta, 4 or 5 years, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What a smile.
And there were 2 other ones. One for the eastern end. I met him the other night, I believe. The other day or something for the first time. But it was one before him that I met.
Through you, Chair. Mr. Morris has been with us for 3 years. He formerly served with the Western schools in Grand Cayman and now is assigned to the Eastern schools.
Must be recently.
He was reassigned to the Eastern schools the beginning of the school year.
Oh, it must be, because I not see him before. But there was another, that's not a good sign, no, a gentleman there as well. So, so we have a 50-50 ratio there, we were saying.
Through you, Chair, currently the ratio is 50-50.
And what about how you recruit your teachers? I don't think anybody answered that. What is the process through which you recruit teachers from overseas?
You say that you're recruiting for one of the, we call them, Martin, SSIOs. Do you have any applications for that vacancy from Caymanians that you're considering?
Through you, Chair, we do. We have just completed the shortlist, and we're contacting individuals now for interview, but there are Caymanians on that shortlist.
Mr. Bush, you had a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, with respect, sir, I would appreciate if they could answer my question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to recruitment, we do advertise overseas. Typically, we advertise on our website as well as through publications overseas. We do not use or have not used in a number of years, and by which I mean certainly not for the last 6 years that I'm aware of for sure, recruitment firms. We advertise, as I said, both in trade publications and through our website and in our local publications, and we get our applications that way. We do not use a recruiting agency for teaching posts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So all applicants apply directly to the ministry or department, whichever has sent out that ad for teachers.
Through you, Mr. Chair, our applications come to the HR unit in the Ministry of Education.
Can they, Mr. Chairman, can the Chief Education Officer tell us what region do they get the most of their applicants from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, typically most of our applications, the majority of our applications come from the Caribbean, but many of the applications that we receive from all regions are from persons who are not fully qualified teachers. So it varies by stage, by the date we advertise. It's typically split with the majority of our applicants coming either from the UK or from the Caribbean, particularly qualified applicants.
Okay. How many people were shortlisted for these posts?
Through you, Mr. Chair, may I just clarify, are we talking about
The SSIO.
the SSIO post? I believe we shortlisted 4 applicants for the SSIO posts.
How many of them were Caymanians?
To my recollection, it's 3 Caymanians were shortlisted out of the 4 persons for the post.
I mean, I'm thinking, why would we not want our own homegrown people? Okay. They know our schools, they know our children. Why wouldn't a principal of, let's say, maybe not even a principal, a teacher, but a principal of 20 plus years not be looked at favorably? What would give you a reason not to look at them favorably? Because I know there's one case where a principal applied and didn't even get a reply, didn't hear nothing.
Mr. Chair, we have actually a very clear succession planning document for the SSIO post, which was circulated prior to the post being advertised to all of our principals, which identified the key areas that we were looking for.
Can I just ask one favor? Those of you within education are quite familiar with what an SSIO is, but for anyone listening in the public for whom we are performing these services, I would like them to understand what an SSIO is. So if you could please state what is an SSIO.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. I was referring to a senior school improvement officer. These are senior posts within the Department of Education Services. 3 of the senior school improvement officers have responsibility for a cluster of schools. So they work with the principals. They are the liaison from the department to support the schools, but also to work with the schools to maintain their performance and to help the schools improve. One of the senior school improvement officers is dedicated to supporting special educational needs.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, ma'am.
I had one more. So you did say there is succession planning for Caymanians to move to higher posts, or just people in the education ministry? I'm talking specifically Caymanians. For our people, for our teachers who can't get a grade up or nothing to move to these various other posts that other people are, is there a success? You can show me a document to show succession planning.
Mr. Chair, over the last year, we have worked with our principals to develop very clear succession planning documentation for 6 key posts within education, which would be part of the normal progression up through the posts. Those are deputy principals for primary, deputy principal secondary, principal primary, principal secondary, teaching and learning coordinator for the secondary schools, and also senior school improvement officer.
Now, maybe you can, through you, Mr. Chair, on 1 or 2 occasions you've said about the quality of people working around you. Why is it seems as only one person can act for you, and that costs us so much to fly the individual in, hotel, over and over, it's the same individual? Is there any succession planning that there are other people in the ministry that could act for you when you go on vacation or you have to go on leave? Is there other succession planning that other people is already earmarked that same line has to continue from the same place, everything?
Mr. Chair, we have had various senior school improvement officers act for me when I am on leave, but our most experienced and Caymanian senior school improvement officer acts for me, particularly in the last couple of years.
The same individual over and over?
Mr. Chair, through you, we have had various people act for me. It depends on schedules and demands, but we have considered this to be part of the process of developing a Caymanian in a key role within the Department of Education Services.
And Caymanians is all 3 islands, right? Not just one.
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Bush, you had a question, followed by Mr. Miller, and then after that, I would like us, if we could take the vote on this particular appropriation.
Mr. Chairman, we could be here all night, but I've heard various questions coming from the government, to the government. We have the budget in front of us. They obviously went through the budget. If there is a problem with the increments, why is that not in this budget?
Mr. Chair, through you, as is obvious from the discussion here, and as much as Minister of Education, I would like to be able to advocate solely for teachers within the civil service, given that that is obviously one of the major concerns of my ministry. The fact is that the decisions regarding the increment and the whole policy adopted by the civil service regarding the remuneration package and constraints was applied civil service wide, and so the responses to that would also need to be civil service wide, as was advised to us by the Deputy Governor. So that's why we have asked to have them look at this policy in earnest and how it is affecting. In this case, we're talking about teachers. We have other cases such as healthcare and other areas. But we still have yet to get those recommendations that would be able to be discussed by the government and decided on from a policy perspective. But it seems very clear that the government is committed to, once we have this policy proposal, then we would be able to take this forward. But I, for one, will continue, as I've started from time I took office, I will continue to ask for and advocate for these type of changes to be made to the general civil service policy arrangements, which is adversely affecting teachers' ability to.
So, Mr. Chairman, the minister is saying there's plenty of willingness heart is willing, but the flesh is weak. Something like that?
No, sir.
Well,
I'll interject here.
yes.
I'll interject, Mr. Bripper. Mr. Bush, I think it has to do with the overall hiring freeze in the government and the lack of salary increases and increments that was imposed some years ago. And I think that the whole country is aware that the UK is concerned about the size of the civil service and the cost of the civil service.
You
and
see,
hence the reason
Mr. Chairman,
why.
you can stop. Let's save time. You see, I'm asking that question because I've heard that I say the government asking the government questions, okay? So the reason I'm asking the question is so what you think would come out. Why don't we just say, look, the UK has imposed restrictions on us and has done so from time we fell into deficit, and we're continuing to do that. And then, I certainly wouldn't ask this question. But if we're splitting hairs and trying to say it's 2010, don't shake your head because it's the truth. If you're just saying it's 2010 and 2010, then I'm going to have to jump in.
No, we've had this problem for quite some years.
Yes.
I don't think it's anything new to this administration. That's right.
Stop asking government questions. It's unparliamentary to do so.
Mr. Miller, this is the last question on this appropriation. The last question.
All right.
Mr. Miller.
I just want to make sure I heard correctly. When the chief education officer said that in the recruiting policy, you may give somebody a salary above the starting point based on their additional qualifications and experience. But when the Caymanian gets the experience or gets the qualifications, they can't get because they're stuck at the point that they are. And I would just ask the minister, why are you waiting for the deputy governor to come up with a proposal for teachers? Why isn't that developed by your ministry and presented to the deputy governor as what needs to be done for teachers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's precisely what I've asked my chief officer to do with respect to coming up with that proposal. And I think that she's just doing so in collaboration with the deputy governor to make sure that the implications for the civil service wide is considered.
Thank you. All those in favor of EGA 6, secondary education services for $23,813,988 standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. EGA 7, education services for students with special needs, $6,735,845 on page 197. Are there any questions? All those in favor of EGA 7, Mr. McLean, you have a question, sir?
No. Mr. Chairman, can the minister or staff say how many kids do we have overseas currently with special needs? That is psychological, whatever the case may be. Mr. Chairman, maybe they can answer another question in the meantime, and that is,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I've just been informed that currently we have 2 students overseas on placement.
okay. Mr. Chairman, then can I ask, what do we do with those kids when they return home? Are they put back into the system, or they stay home?
Mr. Chair, through you, while any decision on the reintegration of a student who has been placed overseas obviously depends on the age of the student upon return and the prognosis of the student and so on. I would say that we have had several very successful returns into the education system in recent years. I can think of two quite recently where students were on overseas placement for a period of time, were stabilized, and have returned very successfully into the education system, either into mainstream education or to Lighthouse School.
To Lighthouse School?
Mr. Chair, yes, that has been the case with we've had 2 students return to Lighthouse School.
That wasn't behavioral, though.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is quite common, and Ms. Cornish might be able to speak more definitively on this, for these cases to be quite complex. So there may be both behavioral and other issues at play. In these 2 cases, there were severe behavioral issues, but there were also other issues as well.
What? Oh, I thought somebody was going back at it. Mr. Chairman, can I ask them what procedures are in place in the schools to, and that's named the high schools, to diagnose these difficulties with children? Wherever they would like, whether it's...
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the Senior Policy Officer for Inclusion and Behaviour to answer that question.
Through you, Chair. We have a special educational needs code of practice in the Cayman Islands, which sets out the phases that schools will go through in terms of identifying and assessing children with special educational needs. The definition of special educational needs is set out in that document to give guidance on how students progress, their social, emotional, behavioural needs, their if they've got speech language difficulties, how in comparison to their peers, what they would be several levels behind. So that would be the starting point. And then schools, I think we're quite aware that there's a need to strengthen special educational needs provision throughout the school system, and obviously we're still facing some challenges. But going forward, we have a high number of specialist services that support schools that are available to offer advice, including educational psychologists, occupational therapists, and these staff are available. Cayman is well resourced with these professionals who can offer advice, do assessments, write reports that enable a student, a teacher, and to know what the next steps are for students. If a student has a significant difficulty, they'd be at a phase 3 on the code of practice, and they have a full assessment, and then an IEP is written where there's clear targets and goals and resources that are recommended for those students.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask the lady, is it so that teachers do not necessarily follow the policy with regards to the operation of those units?
Chair, through you, if I can just clarify Honourable's question about units. Do you mean the centres
the
within?
units such as educational psychologists and the policy of it has to go to them if they see the behavior or the counselors or whatever. Is it not so that teachers tend to preempt all that and punish children instead of possibly identifying a problem?
I think, through you, Chair, that we still face some challenges. We still have high levels of identified need in schools, and I think part of my work going forward is to further build what we call capacity, and that is helping teachers to understand how a child presents with certain special educational needs in their classroom and what things they might do to understand how they might help that child. And I still think there's, because it can be quite challenging, and it's something that we are aware of, and there are some inconsistencies in the application of the Code of Practice that we will be working through next year. We're very keen, as part of that work, to strengthen the role of the special needs coordinator in schools, who will help and assist and perhaps be the first person that teachers might go to if they're a bit stuck. We also have inclusion specialists available, and there's a virtual team that supports the school where the special needs coordinator can coordinate and problem solve perhaps some of those children that present them with challenges. We're certainly looking at developing the support that we give schools and provision, and looking at ways to offer a more tiered, what we call tiered intervention, helping schools with resources and support, because it can to support teachers with children with special educational needs.
Mr. Chairman, it appears on the face of it that these challenges that we're hearing results in the marginalization of those kids who have special needs, and it's not identified early and treated properly. I appreciate the lady saying that we need, going forward, we need to provide these systems or the support, whatever that may be. Will not be placed in all of the schools that support, that whatever it is, a person, a unit, or whatever, to assist those teachers to identify these issues prior to them punishing the children as a result of it.
Through you, Chair, yes. What the building on some of the good practice that does already exist, and the there's a lot of knowledge and skill within Cayman. There's a referral process. We have put all our specialists into an area, and actually there's coverage across the Cayman Islands to access support. What we have planned for in terms of the new school year is that there's a designated post in each school for a special needs coordinator, and those smaller schools there'll be some non-contact time and a duty allowance, which is a step different to how things are now. And the idea being that we would train and offer some support and guidance through what we call high incidence special educational needs, so the behaviour, learning, autism spectrum, speech language communication, so that we're starting to get everybody working in schools have a very general understanding of those needs, and that would be something that would be system wide across all schools, and something I'll be working close with the special needs, the Senior School Improvement Officer for SEN.
Mr. Chairman, a few years ago, I believe the Education Minister Department may say that it was not something authorized by either of them at that time. About 3 years ago, Mr. Miles did a survey of the children in the school with special needs and the likes. I don't know if the Chief Education Officer is aware of that. It certainly didn't seem well for East and Northside School. I don't know how accurate that was and what criteria was used to at the time to measure the behavior of our kids. But what has happened to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to give a bit of history on that, there are two different registers for students, though we often find the students may be on both registers. Mr. Miles worked on and continues to work on the at-risk register, which identifies students who are at risk of negative outcomes within the school system. Now that is separate from, but complementary to, the special educational needs register, which follows the code of practice which has been established for special educational needs. It is not uncommon for students to appear on both registers, but they actually they map two different things. And Ms. Cornish now works with both of those. So with that context established, perhaps she can give some clearer explanation of how where we are with that going forward. But that was by no means unauthorized. It's a very important collaborative project, the at-risk work between the department and the Ministry of Education.
Mr. Chairman, certainly if this list, whatever that is, will be fine in the special needs as well, because in most instances you're going to find the same children. What has been done about these children? Where are they? Are we keeping them in the mainstream? Have we diagnosed them? Have they been taken out, treated, and brought back into the mainstream? Where are they? Were they just left up to their own devices to be a part of the school system and marginalized, and now probably in high school without the ability of numeracy and literacy?
Through you, Chair. We're very aware and conscious that early intervention is very important, and as I understand, Mr. Miles developed a team called the Behavioural Educational Support Team, which is where those children that are most vulnerable to negative outcomes. So this was, those children that might end up being involved in crime or other issues later in life, was to try and coordinate what we call wraparound support. So that's where things outside of education, perhaps affecting a child's ability to manage in school. And having done some detailed case reviews of some of those students, it's has a very positive effect, where additional referrals perhaps have been made to health for them so they can have assessments or medication if necessary, or support from Department of Child and Family Services. In addition to that, I think we've also been able to some of those children do have special educational needs as well, and so that we're able to offer additional support with their reading, writing, and those teams have quite well established, and there's good working relationships with other colleagues across ministries. We have good involvement with the local police, for example. What's been very positive, I think, is we have tried to retain children in school where perhaps there's been, the behavioural needs or emotional needs have been extreme. We have got provision for primary age and secondary age students where they can come out for a while and have some individualised support and a programme for them. And a lot of those children actually return quite successfully. We are going forward wanting to strengthen what happens when those children perhaps come out of school for a little while, and make sure that they get the help and support in a bit more of a comprehensive way, and that there's a clear plan and support for them going back. And subject to the budget approval, we've got some quite exciting plans to strengthen the government of us and have a behaviours specialist support team where we can manage children from early to older and, be more flexible and responsive to their needs in a much more comprehensive way. But we are aware that there are still older students in the system who do present us with challenges that are beyond some of the resources that we have in schools.
Mr. Chairman, it appears to me like at some stage we allow this thing to fester. We allow this thing to fester, and then it becomes truancy. And then there is a lack of follow-up on everybody's part. The teacher don't identify it, never refers it to a special need counselor, coordinator, what have you. And I know some of you are going to say no, but I know what I have lived too, and I see it. I know parents is the beginning of that. I know that. But we have a responsibility too, instead of marginalizing these children. And then it comes to the point where the truancy officer needs to come. I grew up going to school in this country too, government school too. And every week, I know Miss Hilton was there. I don't know who a truancy officer is. I don't think many schools know who the truancy officer is in this country. I don't know if we have one, but it's always intervention. It's never trying to get there and develop these kids and try to work with them. How does that truancy tie in with all of what this young lady is saying to us about developing these kids, pulling them out of the mainstream, doing something to help them? I do apologize, Mr. Chairman, but what I'm hearing is what we should be doing. I'm not hearing what is being done to help to save these children. And Ms. Wallace, you and I spoke the other day. I got 2 young girls in East End that I'm concerned about. But how are you all coordinating it? I don't know. And I would like to hear that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have in all of our high schools, I mentioned further to a question previously asked, inclusion specialists, and their role is to work with those students who are at risk in order to help them remain within the mainstream with support. So whether the problem is a behavioral problem, whether it is a developing problem with poor attendance, there's a whole range of areas in which the inclusion specialists help. And they're actually specialist teachers. So that help is not purely around behavior, but it is on supporting students with challenges in accessing and fully benefiting from mainstream education, from being able to have that access. I mean, that entire role is to prevent the marginalization of students so that they don't have to always be sent out of school, but to give them support within the school.
Mr. Chairman, eventually it reaches the truancy level. What happens there? What is the policy coordination of your truancy officer, if we have one?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have an officer within the department who deals with truancy cases, but while we do have those issues which are purely truancy, I think some of what's been discussed is actually a broader issue around behavioral difficulty, so that so truancy is not then the heart of the problem. It's a symptom of a bigger problem. And what we're trying to do is address the inclusion of students in mainstream education and address those challenges to learning before it becomes habitual truancy.
Thank you. All those.
Mr.
McLean.
Chairman, I still want to hear what is truant also does. Because, yes, truancy is the cause of a bigger problem, the result of a bigger problem. But there is, I know there's, Mr. Chairman, I have students in my constituency who are high school age that don't go to school. Where is the truancy officer? Who is he, she, it, maybe, whatever? Yeah, we are the parents. Let's get the truancy officer to identify those parents and take them in too.
Mr. Chair, if I may, our truancy officer, who is a very long-serving Caymanian member of staff, a former principal, is responsible for registration, attendance, and truancy issues. He works very closely with the inclusion specialists, and in particular with the best teams, those specialist teams that Mr. Miles helped us set up, where we have truancy issues. Ultimately, where there is serious habitual truancy, the next step is to work with the Department of Children and Family Services, because in those cases there's usually a social worker already attached, to recommend care and protection orders or in some other way to work with the courts to help address the truancy issues.
Thank you. Last question on this, and then I'm taking it to the vote. Mr. Bush.
Yes. In the primary schools, the system that you have in place, where the teachers have to type in something if a child does not come to school, there's such a system in place where it goes to the truancy officer. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a student information management system where teachers every morning put in the attendance for their school.
Okay. Just to inform you, similar to what the member from East End just talked about, there's one case in one primary school, and for almost 2 months.
Mr. Bush, we're on to the...
Yeah, I know. Just talking about the truancy officer thing. They were putting that into the system, only for the teacher to find out, called me. I drove to the district and found out the child had been off of school for 2 months. The truancy officer said nothing. So maybe you have to look into this, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. If you would share the specifics of that with me offline, I would be happy to look into that.
Thank you. All those in favor of EGA 7, Education Services for Students with Special Needs for $6,735,845, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Aye. And those against, no. EGA 8, Facilities Maintenance and Procurement Services for $7,269,952. Are there any questions on page 199 of the annual plan and estimates? Are there any questions? EGA 8. All those in favor of EGA 8, Facilities Maintenance and Procurement Services for $7,269,952, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. EGA 10, Education, Evaluation, and Support Services for $4,608,203 on page 202 of the annual plan and estimates. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bush?
When was the last inspection done on our schools, and what were the table results, and what steps were taken to address the concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. The first thing to mention is in terms of school improvement and work at the school level. The CEO has reminded me that to explain that at all schools we have school improvement plans where schools plan to address priorities year on year, both from a national level but also from individual levels of schools. In terms of inspections, again, you will have heard ministers in her opening remarks in the budget debate talk about the commitment beginning this year to reestablish the schools inspectorate or the inspection system to be called the Education Quality Assurance Unit. The reason why there is a need to reestablish is that the regular inspection cycle for government and private schools has not operated for some time.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. She said it has not operated for some time.
Yes.
When last, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I want to repeat again. When, okay, we know it's been a long time. When was the last time? Simple answers needed.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, I was going to go on to say, in terms of the regular cycle not operating, last year the focus was on early years inspections. And so there were a number of inspections of early childhood centers that were undertaken, and that was in the last financial year, begun in the previous year, carried over in the last financial year. So those were the last inspections done. And in terms of follow-ups on those inspections, the Early Childhood Care and Education Unit has been working with the various centers in terms of progressing those. And in fact, one of the priorities once the unit is reestablished will be to do formal progress reports on those centers.
Mr. Chairman, through you, what is the status of the schools inspectorate division in government?
I think he's asking, is there a schools inspectorate division in the government?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the moment, as I said, there is a unit within the ministry. It's called Education Quality Assurance Unit. That's the proposed name going forward. At the moment, we are recruiting, so there are no members currently in the unit. We are recruiting. We have one post remaining, and this has been a problem in terms of getting resources for the unit through budget cuts. Another reason year on year, as we've put forward requests for posts, they have been cut as a result of the budget. We now have one post, and through this budget, we're hoping to get a second one. And as laid out in the outputs here, the proposal, which has been in response to ministers' requests and direction, will be to focus on updating the inspection model and the criteria, consulting and communicating the changes to the model, identifying and training local persons to serve as inspectors, and then being able to implement the inspection cycle. This year, the plan is also to conduct baseline inspections of all schools so that you'll have a starting point from which then the regular inspection cycle going forward will establish progress.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, sometimes it's not our asking questions that's holding up the show. Sometimes a short answer can do. Okay, I'm going to start make mine short too. Next question. Who is Helena McVeigh? How much is she being paid by this government? The last time I called the name, I made a mistake and called a civil servant name, and I still apologize for that. But this time I'm calling a name on purpose. Helena McVeigh. Who is this lady, and how much are we paying her, and what is she doing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Helena McVeigh is a former chief inspector at the inspectorate. She served quite some years ago, and now...
Here in the Cayman Islands, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, she did. She served here in the Cayman Islands as the chief inspector. at one point, heading the schools inspectorate.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And she for some years has been living and working in the United Kingdom. She does run a service in terms of providing inspection services. So from time to time, she has been one of the inspectors used to carry out inspections on island. So she's not used full-time, but she, amongst other inspectors, have provide services to the schools inspectorate. And if I can just explain, that is part of the model for school inspections. It's always been, from the time it was established, to have full-time staff complemented on any inspection team by what we call occasional inspectors, and those include persons from overseas to bring that international perspective, but we also include local occasional inspectors, which are individuals from our schools who are trained to contribute. That is a source of professional development for those individuals, but also a way of preparing them to enter into the inspection unit as well, so part of their progress to being able to go into that field.
Mr. Chairman, she missed the most important question. There's a question in there. How much is she being paid, and how much does each visit cost us?
This one. Make sure that's her. Through you, Mr. Chair. When the question is asked, how much is she being paid? Currently, she's not employed to work with the ministry. When she is engaged to act as an inspector, she receives a professional fee, a daily rate, and return airfare and hotel reimbursement, and that's standard offer for all overseas inspectors. And I have here one example of her receiving a rate of £550 a day. And then including airfare reimbursement of £1,500 and hotel reimbursement from the time she was there. So there is a daily rate that is established for inspectors, and that's the example I've given.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, you go ahead. I know you want a piece of this.
Ms. Rodriguez, could you please, there's some ambient noise in the chamber. Could you please repeat those figures?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I gave the example. I said that, first of all, that Ms. Helena McVeigh is not currently, as the member alluded, working with us. She has been employed on occasion to contribute to inspection teams. And I have an example here of where, on one occasion, she was paid, and this is standard fare in terms of the areas that we cover for overseas inspectors, professional daily rate, this professional fee at the daily rate of $550. There's a return airfare reimbursement of economy of $1.5. These are pounds. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, and a hotel reimbursement of some $2,395 for a stay that lasted 10 days.
So,
That's £550
a day?
Yes,
professional fees per day.
yes.
Airfare, £1,500.
Airfare was £1,500.
Pounds.
Round trip. Economy.
Yes.
And then hotel.
Hotel reimbursement of, and I have here a figure, US 2395
For 10 days.
Yes, 10.5 days, yes.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Thank you.
Has she ever stayed longer than 10 days when she's on one of these contracts? Or is that the shortest stay she stayed for, that you just mentioned?
I don't have the information in front of me to say how long she's stayed on other occasions. I think 10.5 days is it's one of the lengthier visits, and I think in that instance she assisted with some training as well as inspection work. So I would think an inspection typically can run about 5 days if it's just an inspection of one school that we have individuals working on.
And Mr. Chairman, through you, these visits, where are the reports? And have they been tabled, or are these the famous reports that no one can ever get to see?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on our website, in terms of some of these that she contributed were the early years inspections as well. These are published on the website, and as are other inspection reports. And one of the issues, if I can be frank, Mr. Chair, is that because we don't have a fully functioning inspection unit at the moment, and the decision was made once we had a retirement of the final remaining senior school inspector, the final remaining senior inspector, that we would then take the opportunity to look at the model itself and reformulate, re-engineer, so that we'll be in a process to reintroduce. Because of that, we have had some delays or some issues with getting all reports up on the website. And of course, because this is a separate unit, the ministry and myself as chief officer, I don't have access to their emails, their files, and so on. And you will understand that's an important provision to have, so that we are, I've asked for an audit to be taken. We've just recently got access to those files, so that we can undertake an audit to see if there are any other reports and so on that are outstanding that should be on the website, and we are undertaking that at present. But right now, I know the 20-plus reports, if I'm not mistaken, on the early childhood centers are up there, and that those were the major inspection reports completed recently.
Mr. Chairman, through you. I don't know whether I want to give it enough space for it to go on again, but I'll make it, instead of saying, should I say can Caymanians be trained, or should I say, is there a Caymanian that can be trained, even if we have to send them overseas to be the chief inspector? And let's keep in mind we have 3 islands, so they can come from either one of the islands, not just one island.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we, as I said, if the additional post is required, both of those posts will be advertised, and I'm certainly hoping, as part of the rollout of the inspection program, that we will be engaging with our local educators to give them the opportunities for training, so that they can be part of the inspection service. Although I would hasten to say we are talking about, just given the limitations in headcount, a very small service with two inspectors on team, because that's all the resources we have at the moment. So we are very limited in terms of the roles that will be as part of the unit.
Thank you. No, Mr. Bush was waiting to ask.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've been fairly quiet. I had to miss Cayman Airways because of family. I had to miss SEMA because of family. This is my last year.
Yeah, but don't blame us for family.
I know. This is my last year, and this got my daughter's now a teacher, so this is the only time I get a chance to ask these questions. Give me 2 more. According to my information, the inspectorate framework has not been updated close to 5, 6, 7 years. Shouldn't this be a priority?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the inspection framework, the current version is to the 2011 framework. And as I said earlier, in the relaunch of the inspection program, that is one of the priorities that will come with the relaunch of the inspection program. It's the updating of this handbook, as well as the criteria and the inspection model itself.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, one last question. Mr. Chairman, through you to the minister, I really and truly feel that it's time all of these various reports, especially these expensive ones, we should be getting a copy of every one of these things. Because this cannot be just held in-house, and this ministry has a history of talking to other ministers of these things, and nobody's not seeing the light of day. It's time for this to stop. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to say that one of the initiatives in talking to the minister about how to go forward, that she has added, which I think will be very useful going forward just for clarity and for consistency in approach, is that there will be an additional step added where once the inspectorate prepares the reports, they are immediately tabled with cabinet and then laid in the House. And in fact, one of the things we're working towards is that there will be an annual basis, a summary of inspection findings. So I think that's a very welcome development that will aid that clarity and that assurance that as soon as reports are completed, that of course there's always time for feedback and so on from the stakeholders, but that's the process going forward.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was just going to thank my chief officer for laying that information on the floor of the House, but that's exactly the intention. And so to the members' concern about the lack of transparency that may have existed previously, we want to make sure that as these inspections are done, that they are tabled with cabinet to then be laid to the House in the format that the chief officer has outlined, is what we said in our budget debate and what is intended going forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, recently there was a news report about preschools and about, I think, early intervention program. And I just want to find out whether the program is staffed, how well it's staffed, and whether yes, I'd like to know who the head of that program is, and if the problem, as the report says, it is, what is the government doing to rectify that? And I just want to say that I don't know every preschool in the country, but the preschool does perform a very needed service, and I think the vast amount of, as I said, I don't know all of them, but the ones that I do know perform, and those in my district perform a very good job.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for clarity from the honourable member, you said early intervention program. Were you intending the early childhood care and education unit? That's
whatever they're calling it these days.
Okay, sir.
Maybe I'm a little bit outdated with names because you got so many acronyms and so many different heads now. But anyway, that's the one.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Just to say that the early childhood unit is a unit within the ministry who are tasked with providing support to early childhood centers in order to improve and address issues. And we have, in fact, a fully Caymanian team for members, and the unit is headed by Ms. Carol Bennett, and I'll ask her to speak and respond to your question, which Ms. Carol focused on what assistance is being provided by the unit to respond to the issues. Did I get that correct, Mr. Bush? Thank you.
You would have known about the big article in the paper.
This CNN, yeah, the press release. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Carol Bennett. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor and Manager for Early Childhood Care and Education in the Ministry of Education. So through you, Mr. Chair, our unit is mandated, tasked with to improve early childhood centers, the quality and provision across all the islands. Like Ms. Rodriguez said, we are fully staffed with all Caymanians in 4 posts. We take different approaches depending on the needs of the children and the needs of the owners and staff. We do individual training where if there's an individual teacher who's having a special difficulty, we go in and work side by side. We offer large group trainings. We also work with owners to develop their policies and their procedures so they can better run the school. We will speak at parent meetings to help educate the parents about the needs of the children in early childhood. Well, we've also helped to connect the preschool owners with private citizens who would like to help, contribute, or donate. We also work with DCFS with the early intervention program, and with the various people in our own ministry, like the literacy specialists and numeracy specialists, to help develop programs in the preschools and in the receptions.
But the government then, you're talking about the management of it, of the program. That's done from within the ministry. Your unit, you're talking about the management of that whole program.
The ministry, we are part of the ministry. The early childhood centers, most of them are privately owned.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, so we work side by side with the private businesses. We also have a registration and re-registration process, which is under the Education Council, and it's a part of their guidelines, and we work with various agencies such as DEH, Public Health, Fire, and they inspect the schools, and we present the centers then to the Education Council, and we started a re-registration process, whereas they're re-registered annually.
How many schools are you overseeing?
We work
or
with,
centers, you call them.
We work with all the early childhood centers. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. We work with all the early childhood centers, and I can give you a breakdown of just how many there are.
Just the number of how many there are.
Okay.
I don't need from which districts or anything.
Okay, fine. We have reception programs in 9 government schools, and we work with all of them. We have 24 private early childhood centers and 1 government-owned daycare in the Cayman Brac. And we also have 10 early childhood settings that is attached to private schools. So it's 35 in total.
35.
Plus the 9 reception classes. Settings.
And your staff to oversee them.
Yes,
Not
sir.
talking about the teachers in the centers. I'm talking about within the ministry.
Our ministry is 4 members of staff, including myself.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
I must go back to, I didn't want to ask a question after the member from West Bay. The B. Bush asked, but I didn't hear the answer I wanted, and that is, when was the last time we had a school inspection? Complete schools inspection. And I ain't talking about the specific ones that we target. I'm talking about school inspection.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have not had a school, I think, well, I'm sorry if I have to, I don't have the exact dates here in front of me, but I know that in terms of the last government school inspection, it would have been several years since we've had a formal government school inspection. So the model has not been operating. We have focused, as I said, the last year and the previous year on using the limited resources we have to focus on the early years, because that was a big strategic steer to get information to be able to drive that forward. So the cycle, the honest answer is that the regular cycle has not operated for some time, and since 2006 when the staffing cuts started to happen to the inspectorate unit.
Mr. Chairman, certainly. Since 2006, when they started cutting, my information is we haven't had one since 2008 under the minister there. And then prior to that, it was a long time, but I don't know how long prior to that we didn't. But certainly the chief officer said and introducing herself earlier today that she was the chief inspectorate or something. So she must understand the importance of getting these measurements to know exactly where we are in our schools. And if there are any failings, it must be attributed directly to the lack of data to make good management decisions. Mr. Chairman, she prides herself, and rightly so, of being one of the chief inspectorate in this country. Are Caymanians being trained to take over and be chief inspector?
Through you, Mr. Chair, obviously I was chief inspector, and there was also another chief inspector after myself who was also Caymanian. So I think certainly one of the aims and goals as we go forward, I've said before, it's about ensuring that we spend, even beginning this year as a major focus, it's about training our staff to participate and develop the inspection skills, and therefore to have the opportunity to be a part of the unit. So I certainly do support that that's a very critical development, and I certainly look forward to many more Caymanians becoming a part. And when I was chief inspector of schools, that was one of the, I think, the benefits or the pluses or achievements, I would say, is that we created opportunities for Caymanian teachers to start off as occasional inspectors and then find their way and be able to qualify and be a part of the inspection team. And we had several Caymanians pass through and become a part of the school's inspectorate when it was fully staffed in previous years. And I certainly would hope that that's what we achieve again, although I will say, again, we are down to 2 persons in a unit where when it was originally conceived, I think it was up to 6 or 7 persons at one stage as the part of the team.
Mr. Chairman, if we're going to start this new team, aren't there potential Caymanians who potentially can fill these spots? Or what is our intent to start this team up? Bring someone in?
Having worked in the inspection system, we do need a trained person to lead. We do need trained people to do the inspection system. We will be advertising. I would certainly hope that as an outcome, perhaps one of those posts could be a Caymanian brought in and as part of the training for that. And I certainly would hope that we would continue the cycle that has experienced before, where we end up with a fully Caymanian inspectorate team in time.
Mr. Chairman, I still don't hear anything about, and I may not know how this works, and Mrs. Rodriguez obviously knows more than I do, but I still don't hear, in all those teachers that we have there as Caymanians, you were one that someone saw the potential in you to be this. And none of them that we can find now to start up this team. We got to bring in overseas. Yeah, we may find a couple, but I'm talking about some of them that were there before. Oh, they're all gone now. They're not the more that you can shift up over.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I certainly hope that when we advertise, we will find individuals who are interested. There are individuals from the past who have acted as occasional inspectors, and in talking to a number of them, there is a considerable interest. So I'm looking forward to people stepping forward and showing an interest. I certainly hope that that will be the case. We will run an open advertisement as we are required to do, and I certainly hope we will find Caymanians who are interested in taking this up as a way of progressing in their careers.
Mr. Rodriguez, with
Yes.
no disrespect to you, I hear something in there that you're not going to have confidence in somebody. And that's fine, as long as, I don't know if it's the way you say it, but I just don't feel like we have them there. And it is such a critical aspect of management of our education system in our country. I think it must have priority. It must be one of the priorities, and be receptive to the recommendations therefrom. And we can't survive like this if we don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bush, then Mr. Saku.
Yes, looking at the annual budget statement, page 561, MEG 8. The thing when you hear that we haven't done an inspection since 2008 under the present premier. I'd like to thank you for getting those inspections done that time, sir. But MEG 8, under quality. And when you sit and you think that we're giving 1.5 million to private schools and they're not being inspected to see whether we should be giving them this 1.5 million or not. But it says, under quality, all reports to be reviewed by chief officer prior to publication. And my question is, we haven't seen no publications. And I see in this vote where we've gone from 217,000 to 135 to 310,986. Is that increase? What's that increase? Is that to bring in the inspector from England again at about 30, 40 grand a trip? It's education, Mr. Tibbetts. Our children are suffering.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
It's gone on for too long.
I presume an MEG8, in terms of the costs, I'm referring to the cost of the output, and there is a forecast cost of 217, and this year's is estimated at 310. Can I just clarify that's what the honourable member is referring to? Oh, the whole thing. Oh, sorry.
We've gone from 217,135 for 213-14 to 214-15 is 310,986.
That's the reference I was making. And you're asking why
this increase, yes.
Why that increase? The first explanation is that in the 13-14 year, we only had one individual on staff, one inspector. So part of this increase is to account for the additional posts that we're hoping to get to bring up the unit when we advertise to have a two-man team. So that's part of what is envisaged there.
And this two-man team,
Two persons.
two persons, sorry, gender correct. Are they by any chance Caymanian or is it someone from overseas again?
Mr. Chair, if I can just, and obviously, to reiterate once again, the ultimate decision with respect to staffing lies with the chief officer as the delegate of the deputy governor in this instance for the ministry. But the general policy thrust that I've given as a steer is to ensure that we try first and foremost to identify suitably qualified Caymanians and to give that opportunity. And if there's any training to be had, obviously, then we would want to do so in the context of our own as well, to keep that intellectual capital, because that's the same approach that we're taking with dealing with private sector. So as I said, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. And so as a general policy direction, that is what we would expect that the ministry and hopefully the government at large would be looking to do and fill civil service positions.
Thank you. Mr. Saku.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if the chief officer could tell us when the decision was made to disband the schools inspectorate and offer an explanation as to why.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was never, as far as I'm aware, a decision taken to disband the school inspectorate. As I said, in looking back over developments in the system since 2006, we saw year-on-year staffing reductions. If there were vacancies, they weren't filled, they were cut as part of the annual budget process. And I think that's been the challenge of getting the resources to make it viable. as the member, not this honorable member, but other members have said, I certainly appreciate and value the role of an inspection system, and I think a lot of the emphasis in the last 4 or 5 more years have been on education reform, reforming the system, getting the system and structures in place. And I think and I'm excited about the possibility that an inspection team, we're well placed now within our system to have an inspection team that won't be an add-on, but will certainly provide that added value to give feedback about progress and priorities for the way forward.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to stay out of this, but it comes as a surprise to me, as a former Minister of Education, that there were policy decisions taken to cut posts in what was called initially the Schools Inspectorate, but which assumed the name of the Education Standards and Assessment Unit under my responsibility. Because in the development of the new education plan, ESOL, as it was called, featured very prominently. And in all the years that I was minister, there was a robust system of reports. I know because I had to see them, approve them, and sign off on them. And I really question whether or not there was not a policy decision, because my sources told me that a policy decision was taken following the elections in 2009 to essentially let the Education Standards and Assessment Unit fall away. And certainly what we've seen since then is there's this constant reference to 2006, but as far as I'm aware, there were inspections taking place up until the elections in 2009. And it seems clear that over the course of the last 4 years, that inspections were not a major part of the new strategic direction for education. I always thought that was a huge mistake, because we have nothing against which we can measure how well the schools are doing. Even under the old system of Schools Inspectorate, I had concerns that there was just, I wouldn't say the relationship was incestuous, but it was just too close to the department, too close to the ministry, for there to be true independent evaluation of what was transpiring with respect to the schools. Because all of us who are here understand the politics of the matter. No one with responsibility wants to have to face the public criticism that a school or for which they are responsible is not performing well. And so you need a robust, independent unit, organization, institution, whatever you want to call it, to be able to look objectively at how well or not the schools are doing. And unless we do get such an organization, I believe we're going to continue to struggle because we don't get the proper reading on how well the schools are performing, how well the teachers are performing, if it is all part and parcel of the department, and in fact just a unit within the department. And so, I mean, I'm no longer the Minister for Education, but it is something that I would urge the Minister to look very carefully at, because if we are to continue to improve education standards in this country, we need objectivity, a level of objectivity that a unit within the department simply cannot provide.
Mr. Chair, through you, I'd like to thank the Premier for that interjection, and to reiterate to Finance Committee what was committed to by myself as Minister, but also in his contribution to the debate. Councillor Connolly also spoke about the direction of the Ministry with respect to the quality assurance unit not being a unit of the department as existed previously. But with respect to the new education framework that we're hoping to bring online, it will basically codify the independence that the Premier is speaking of, because we recognize, as the Premier did in his contribution, that we need to have this independent, this sufficiently independent agency to do just that, to be able to conduct its assessments, obviously guided by the broad policy framework and parameters of the government and the ministry as to what we would like them to look at in areas of focus. But essentially the report and their assessment thereof of the institutions would be sufficiently independent, and again then the report would be delivered to Cabinet for onward delivery to the House. So as Minister of Education, I want to state again, I agree with that approach, and that is the direction that we are taking with the Ministry of Education when we look at doing these baseline inspections this year as a start. Before we get the agency up and running, we're doing the baseline inspections so we can establish exactly where we are in the system, and then we can measure the improvements going forward against that baseline.
Mr. Miller, you have a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, we were supposed to get back to this report. Do you know which report is which report?
No, I have that highlighted, sir, but that's EGA 1. I have that highlighted. We're about to take the vote on EGA 10 now.
But I just have one broad question.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you EGA, but I can tell you it'll be rare late at night.
Now you know how you felt when you kept us at 2 o'clock in the morning? You were punished tonight for it. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to ask a question of the government and of the Premier. Is education a priority of this government? Because if education is a priority, education should be more equal among equals. And I keep hearing that education is suffering like everything else in the government and is being cut equally. If education is our priority, as we say it is, then there has to be some recognition of that priority, and in allocating the resources, that priority gets a little more than Cayman Airways, for instance, or roads, or some other thing that is not as priority as education, because we keep hearing this fallback that, well, the deputy governor says we can't give increments, the deputy governor says we can't do this and we can't do that. And if we're allowing the civil service to determine, to say that there's no priority for education, and therefore education can't get anything more than anybody else, then I think we got a serious problem.
Thank you. I'll proceed to taking the vote. I'll take the vote at this time. All those in favor of
Actually, Mr.
EGA.
Chair, I think it's important for me just to thank the member for that suggestion, and to say that obviously, you know, we do recognize there are constraints and there are the necessary balancing of the priorities. I was given the mandate as to this is the budget that I was asked to work within, and we obviously had to work within that. And I have to say that my staff worked very hard to ensure that they managed to deal with as many of the issues as possible within that framework. But yes, I would welcome any additional resources in that respect, because as you said, there are many needs. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of EGA 10, Education, Evaluation and Support Services for $4,608,203, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no.
Next one now.
Appropriation CDB 1. Actually, sorry, let's go back to EGA 1 and clarify that matter with respect to reports. EGA 1 is on page 191. EGA 1, Policy Advice, Governance and Ministerial Support Services. I think the only thing we were trying to clarify was whether the new report is the same as the original report, or if it's a summary or what.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have some documentation that I'd like distributed. I will speak to, and I would like distributed to the members at the relevant points.
I think this is the relevant point now, so.
So can we just, I don't know where the sergeant.
What are we doing? He should be able to.
Mr. Chair, if I, may I begin, or?
Yes.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rodriguez, unfortunately, the opposition hasn't yet received their copy, so if we could just give them a few
That's
minutes.
another thing. They keep leaving us out. They still don't understand. They're supposed to know them reports. We're supposed to get them first. Because we're not supposed to know about them. Government is supposed to have them. Not got none of them? They got them, don't worry, but I wait to hear him try to blame UDP again. Alden Ben had that, I know. What does that mean now? 1, 2.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what I'm able to clarify, and the honorable member presented two documents, one labeled original, one labeled new and revised, and they were recommendations from a report. And what I have been able to confirm, Mr. Chair, is that the version or the document label original appears to be the recommendation from a draft version of the report that was undertaken based on the review that was undertaken in November 2012. So that original is actually a draft version of the report, an earlier version, as I had mentioned earlier. The document labeled new is actually the recommendation section of the final report that was prepared on the behavior review. What I have sought to provide to members, I did some quick email checks. I've sought to provide two emails and another document, and I'll explain what I think they illustrate, or the point that I'm making with sharing these particular documents. The first email, number 1, is, I think, is instructive. As I mentioned before the break, that there were concerns at the draft stage about the quality of the report. And if you'll bear with me, I think just reading some of the comments here verbatim might be useful. This email, just for context, was delivered to the inspector, the consultant, Mr. David Moore, by Dr. Joe Wood, who is was the chief policy advisor in the ministry, and Mr. David Moore was the consultant. Her comments, I think, are blunt, but I think they're They just speak to the matter and the situation at hand. So she starts off by saying, thank you for version 2 of the report. And she says, I've pondered long and hard about reply, but since you've been direct, you will understand if I do likewise. And given that you're so familiar with evaluating and providing feedback, I'm sure you'll, of other professionals, I'm sure you will understand the importance of quality assurance and constructive feedback on your report. The second paragraph goes on to say the support and wisdom you shared with reviewers and ministry during your visit was highly regarded, as was the oral feedback you gave at the end of the review. You were highly experienced, skilled, and perceptive. However, the standard of the draft report did not match up to this. Overall, it did not read as coherent, well put together, and accurate document. Spending the time to get it up to scratch is not extra work, but it is a matter of professional necessity on the part of a consultant. It is essential to have, especially in the public domain, a report of high quality, free of mistakes and inaccuracies. It's a consultant's responsibility to ensure this. I've already explained that Mrs. Rodriguez sets high standards for reports and other written documentation, and your report will be expected to meet these same standards. She goes on to say, I spent my time helping with the report during my leave because I would not have wished it to go to Mrs. Rodriguez or the minister as it stood. It could not possibly be published with spelling, grammatical, and punctuation mistakes, sentences that are imprecise or difficult to understand, or with little mention of major initiatives introduced by the minister to address low attainment and inclusion, such as, and she names a range of programs. I say this because I hope ministers or honorable members will appreciate the significance of having to challenge someone on the quality of a report and the level of concern. I think when Minister and Councillor came into the ministry, this was one of the questions, like other members here, they ask questions. They've heard something on the Mall Road. Are there different versions of the report? I shared these emails at the same time with them to help them understand what was the situation. I think overall the outcome of this work and having someone to intervene with someone of what should have been the high standard of a consultant was extremely disappointing and an area of concern. We were expecting a lot from someone so eminently qualified, and then when it came down to the report, to have to be discussing issues of this sort of level, this was indeed very, very disappointing. I think the second email I just wanted to share with you, I think the honourable member asked about the role of Ms. Favorita Blanchard, who was the one standing member of the inspection team at that point. And just to explain the context, there were a number of local individuals invited to participate in the inspection, because that's part of the developmental model. So a number of individuals who inspected, they visited individual schools, they did what we call the observation forms, they completed their observations based on their visit. That was put in centrally to Mr. Moore and Ms. Blanchard, and they were the ones who pulled from those various reports to various observation forms to develop the report. So the two people that had the overview were the local inspection team member and the consultant. And the email that I was able to find here it just illustrates the discussions with Mr. Moore to Ms. Blanchard, establishing that he was relating to her. They were polishing, he called it, polishing the draft, reworking it. And I think on the second email, which is Tuesday, the 1st of January, the key point that I thought this would be useful to illustrate, if you look at page 2 of his second email, he talks about, as Deputy Lead Inspector, and this is to Ms. Favorita, you're the only person to have the complete overview besides myself. I need your view on the draft to be able to judge how far away we are from a draft that is acceptable to be sent into the system. I need to know the following. Have you covered the main points? Is the report coherent? Does it divide between primary and secondary work? Is it balanced? And so on. And he goes on. And I just use that to illustrate that discussion and that relationship and asking the questions. Yes, there's a draft report, but there is a lot of work to be done before it's finalized. And unfortunately, as I said from that other email, not only while he was asking the points, there were some really serious concerns about the quality of the report. And the last document that I've included here, it was just a summary of some of the issues of the report that we put together in order to be able to talk to the minister and councillor about about the report itself. Because as I said, they themselves asked the question, what is the status of the report? Is there two versions or not? I explained to them as I explained now. We had a draft report, there were significant issues, and we ended up having to have the local inspection team member go back to the observation forms to look at the actual facts. What we've ended up with as a report, what I can say is that I have been assured that at least it's factual, it's based on the evidence, it can be supported. What was in the draft report, we couldn't say that. And I'll just share a few things here that were comments about the concerns again, just to even add to that. It talked about, this report here talks about the structure of the report. It lacks a clear structure. It says the headings are broad, for example, ethos, behavior, managing behavior do not reflect the intended outcomes of the review. It hasn't distinguished clearly between primary and secondary schools. There is no reference to a previous review and report from 2006 that was led by another inspector. There's little inclusion. Scant reference to attendance was another area that we were seeking to get feedback on. And then it talks about the findings. They're disproportionately negative. They focus on very challenging behavior of a very small number of students. Does not give enough scenarios of good practice from which other schools can learn. It talked about idiosyncratic references. For example, I shared the quote earlier that there was something in the report about manhood training, and the comment here says, well, that may be common phrasing somewhere in the world, but we doubted it. The report did not comment on the support services designed to improve behavior. And just to say to Mr. Chairman, our expectation, behavior is such a critical area with so much investment, so much need. The expectations that this inspection would produce workable, useful information for us to drive forward the system, to encounter these sort of things was extremely, I would say honestly, frustrating, disappointing that what we had was unworkable. I think what we ended up with, I felt confident based on the feedback of the local inspection team member. It was based on actual evidence. You could link it back to what all those various team members had contributed in terms of their observations. So I think I was confident for that respect. But to be honest, having had to require the local team member to do that much work, to then go ahead and launch that as a national published report, what the decision was taken, let us use what we have to inform the work of the ministry's team. And then we took great advantage when our new senior policy advisor came in, again with the mandate to look at behavior. And I think what she's delivered is what we were actually hoping that this inspection, this initial inspection would have covered. So not to say that the information isn't useful, but it was not what we had hoped.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I have two competing questions here. I have Mr. Bush and Mr. Miller.
Well,
Mr. Bush. Mr. Bush.
How the chief officer just ended her summary of the report, I guess, is what she was trying to do. It said that while it was, I guess, not a bad report, it wasn't what they wanted. I think that's how she ended. Am I right?
Just to be very clear, because I think we need to be very careful, very clear. I need to be very clear, sir, and I apologize if I'm not. What I'm saying is that the report was not of the standard. There were so many inaccuracies, it wasn't evidence-based and so on. I'm not saying that it wasn't what we wanted in terms of we were expecting glowing. I'm talking about a quality report with information that could be useful, that we could use to improve the system.
Put together bad, if you want to use a different word, not to say that you wanted to say something that wasn't so. No, I didn't gather that from you. What I gathered from you is that this report was just a poor report. And my question is that members of the review team were this Dr. David Moore, I don't know who that is, CBE, lead reviewer, and this Favorita Blanchard, Barbara Pierce Ebanks, Kiva Powell, Wilbur Lee Range, Centonia Cacho, Carol Bennett, Gloria Bell, Vicky Frederick Amador, Lenith Monteith, Kimberly Watler Litrico, Joe Wallace, Elroy Bryan, Lydia Warren, Alfred Gordon, and Pedro Lazari, deputy principal of some school. And there are several deputy principals, all those lead reviewer, assistant lead reviewer, and the various posts they held, which are senior school improvement officer, managing professional development, policy advisor, family learning, policy advisor, initial teacher education, early childhood, instructional specialist, principals, deputy principals, more principals, senior teachers, learning mentors. And on top of these, what I thought would have been people in the know in our educational system, people that certainly I trust in the system, if they haven't come up and did not put together a report that you all are satisfied with, well, I am just sorry that that is so. And Mr. Chairman, I can't say no more than that, but I am surprised. I am surprised with the bank of knowledge and those personnel that we've come to this stage.
Thank you.
And I am not saying that I am not taking any part here because I haven't been able to read all of this. I know a lot of it that's in this. I certainly believe is correct from knowledge, by visitation to schools and my knowledge of the system over the years. Not to say that everything. What I am concerned about, if that's what they have done, is that you have 7 or 8 pages of recommendations and then you got 1.5. I mean, that says a lot about what was produced in the original report. I mean, I understand the chief officer saying she didn't expect them to tell her that it was good if it was bad. But by the magnitude of what they have taken out, then it must have been pretty bad.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I listened very carefully to what the chief officer said, and during the break I took the time to try to compare the two reports. And maybe I just happened to pick out the wrong sections to read, but it looks to me like everything that was said bad about teachers is removed, but stuff that was said bad about the children remained. And I don't know whether that is the quality or the evidence that was included, because I really don't see a lot in the 15-page report that talks about the language and attitudes and stuff of teachers and stuff like that. Are you saying there was no evidence to support that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what I'm saying as general comments that were passed on and were taken forward by the local school inspector representative was that there were issues with information not being factually corrected, supported by facts, evidence, contextualized. I wouldn't say or think that any instruction was given about taking out what teacher contributions were. I think the big question or the big expectation is that whatever is stated is based on actual evidence that was observed and evidence that could be drawn on. So I've taken the members' word that there seems to be changes in terms of not having commented on teachers. I can't say that for sure whether there is a big disparity in that. I think the focus was, or the intention was, let us make sure that whatever the comments or recommendations are made are supported by evidence. Let's go back, let's draw on the observations. And just as a point of clarity, the member asked about, Mr. Bush mentioned about the quality of the individual, the local educators who participated. Absolutely quality input, but their contribution was as a result of their individual visits to a school, and they produced lesson observations, and that was the basis. They didn't contribute to writing the report, but in having to go back to the evidence, that's what the local inspector had to do, to go back to the observation forms written by these individuals to pull together the comments.
Thank you. All those in favor of EGA 1, policy advice?
Mr. Chairman, before you, I just want to understand something. So this is the first email is from this Mr. Joe Wood, Dr. Joe Wood. That is, and he's the chief policy advisor. She. And then the next one is from who? From from Mr. David Moore.
That's correct, sorry.
And that's page 1 and 2?
Yes.
So that I understand.
Yes.
The last document is a critique by the ministry.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, as I explained, this critique, when the new minister, Minister Rivers, and the councillor came into office, one of the questions they put to us was a very similar question that's been presented tonight. They had heard that there was a draft version or another version of the report, and they asked us to account for it, very understandably so. And this was some of the summary points that we shared with them, in addition to some of the emails here, to explain what was the situation, as I've explained tonight.
But so this critique was put together when?
This critique was put together, I think, and this would have been around July of 2013.
This critique?
These comments here.
July 2013?
Yes.
And?
Just as a summary of what the issues were.
So the revised report that I'm speaking to, this one, when was that put together?
The revised report, or the final report, would have been completed, I think, in February.
February?
Of 2013, because the inspection, remember, happened in November 2012, and we had Mr. Moore corresponding and in the process of finalizing the report between, I think, December, January. His email says February.
It shows that somewhere around December and January it was finalized.
Right.
The second report, revised report, would have been in February?
I presume it's around that time.
2013?
It would have been finalized.
And this then would have been, this critique would have been in?
This would have been prepared, sir, by the ministry, as we said,
July,
to summarize.
July, when? 2013?
Right. In order to respond to the questions posed by the current minister and councillor.
Mm-hmm. I understand. It's late, but I understand. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Rodriguez, just before we take the vote, what was the cost of the report, please?
They had plenty of fun after December.
have the total cost?
Awesome. I don't
You have
think
that
so.
figure?
All right.
And would we have paid the local education's rate? That's what we know. So we just, okay. Okay, so,
I started it all in the Can take the vote, Mr. Chairman.
Soon as we get the
So
cost of
what's
the
the-
report, so we can have the full, everything in comprehensively.
On
Yeah,
the, in
well, I
the
can
hand
by
side,
this
you're
column.
talking about.
you can tell the quick.
Mr. Chairman, you can start 9 o'clock. You can start.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the report ended up costing us a total of 23.7 thousand pounds. Yes?
$23,700.
Yes.
Pounds.
Was that
Pounds.
dollars?
And this is the
Was
report written by the lady Blanchard. Who's the author of this report in question?
The final version would be the Favorita Blanchard, who had to complete the report. I mean, they're yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll proceed to the vote. So all those in favor of EGA 1, policy advice, governance, and ministerial support services for $4,963,482, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. And those against, no. Appropriation CDB 1, Government Scholarship Funding Program, $48,451 on page 205. Are there any questions? All those in favor of CDB 1, Government Scholarship Funding Program, $48,451, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. NGS 25, Teaching of Tertiary Education Courses, $90,000 on page 206. Are there any questions? All those in favor of NGS 25, Teaching of Tertiary Education Courses, $90,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. NGS 27, Supervision of Preschool Children, $54,000 on page 207. Are there any questions? All those in favor of NGS 27, Supervision of Preschool Children, $54,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. NGS 34, Primary and Secondary Education by Private Schools, $1,530,000 on page 208. Are there any questions, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what is the objective of government who is so short of resources for its public schools? We heard earlier on in the response to questions that some of the good teachers are leaving the public system and going into the private school system, and here we are subsidizing these private schools to the tune of $1.5 million.
We haven't got there
Couldn't
yet.
those resources be spent better within the public system?
Mr. Chair, through you, the member will know that the subsidy to private schools obviously didn't start with this particular administration. However, the broad purpose with respect to assisting private schools, from my perspective, would be that to ensure that we have schools available to meet the needs of the numbers of students in our country. And if we were, as a country, having to absorb everybody in the public school system, that would obviously cause major strain and constraints on the current school provision. So from a kind of broad policy perspective, it's still valuable to be able to ensure that we have sufficient schools available to meet the needs of the wider population. And the fact is we simply don't have the numbers and capacity within the government school system to be able to meet those needs of all the children in the country presently.
Mr. Chairman, I know that many people take a view that that is money that is not well spent. And certainly we can ask and try to compare with the needs and those needs that we are not meeting. However, when we look at the budget for primary school, 20,606,20.6, and when you look at the secondary education services, is 23.8. And if you had to put the number of children into the private, that is in a private school, into the public schools, you can believe all two of those figures would escalate seriously. From back in the 90s when this was done, there's been this argument going as to the value of government putting that kind of money, $1.something million into assisting private schools. I've never had that argument. My argument has always been that some of those schools are more well off than others, and that's not hard to see. So my first thing would be that some of those schools being so well off might be not getting the same amount as one that would be less well off, let's say. And as I said, maybe some people say, well, that's not objective because you can't tell who is more well off or less well off. But I believe that that's not a hard thing to do. But my support from the 90s that was put in place, and it was put in place at a time when I was at probably my first entrance into cabinet politics was back in the 90s, and that's when I think it was started, maybe before, but certainly quite a bit of money was being given then, Mr. Chairman. I certainly support that.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, then all those in favor of NGS 34, primary and secondary education by private schools, so $1,530,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No.
NGS 76, Autism Diagnostics and Sexual Trauma Recovery Program, $28,825. Are there any questions? Mr. Eden?
Mr. Chairman, this was a question I was going to touch on from earlier on, but you overlooked me, but I didn't complain. This is about autism and may not be the area. And I know that the minister has heard me a number of times talk about it. Just wondering the collaboration between, and this is specific to autism and autistic children, the collaboration, because a lot of this has to deal with the health ministry. And I say this because I know a number of parents have come to me that when they have to travel overseas for follow-up care with the doctors over there, they have such a hard time. I see this goes to the wellness center, and I also see it was cut, which I think is unfortunate, but whatever reason. But just to say, you know, how we continue to deal in collaboration, I must say, with the Ministry of Health
supported it then, so.
for the autistic children.
Mr. Chairman, before she asks, I don't know if Mr. Eden asked about why that vote was cut, but I would have thought that would have been increasing a little bit.
I did.
Because of the need that exists.
And the parent increase. Right?
I'm gonna be the last one out, don't I?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of NGS 76, there's two components. One element is the autism diagnostics, where we have an arrangement with the Wellness Centre to provide specific training in a particular approach called applied behavioural analysis, where children who are diagnosed with on the autism spectrum sometimes respond well to this particular approach, which uses like a behavioural modification technique, and you have to have properly qualified accreditation in order to deliver an ABA therapy. So we actually access that therapy through the Wellness Centre, and they offer us support and training to develop our staff, and particularly work with the Lighthouse Special School. And then the other element of this NGS 76 is, which is the bigger proportion, relates really to us meeting the needs of children and young people who've possibly been party to sexual abuse, and then we offer them trauma therapy. We've improved the referral pathway with health.
Ms. Cornish, can you speak up a little louder, please?
Yeah,
we're all struggling to hear you.
I apologise for my quiet voice. In relation to the sexual trauma therapy, we work closely with the HSA therapists who actually to improve the referral pathway, so that children are identified who have suffered sexual trauma get appropriate help and support. We actually have reduced that service this year, partially because we were able to improve the alignment with our health colleagues and actually have a clearer referral pathway, so that we wasn't duplicating, and actually all children are seen at the health, and then any of those where perhaps they need a different approach or their needs can't be met actually then go on to the Wellness Centre. So we was actually able to make some...
Thank you.
No, the services haven't
Thank you.
increased.
All those in favour of NGS 76, Autism Diagnostics and Sexual Trauma Recovery Program, $28,825, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. NGS 77, Music Therapy Services for $59,661. On page 211, are there any questions? All those in favor of NGS 77, Music Therapy Services, $59,661. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
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 NGS 79, K9 Security Services, $31,500. On page 212, are there any questions? All those in favor of NGS 79, K9 Security Services, $31,500, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Turning now to transfer payments. TP 27, Preschool Educational Assistance, $713,800. On page 285, are there any questions? All those in favor of TP 27, preschool educational assistance, $713,800, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
TP 30, local and overseas scholarships and bursaries, $10,762,690 on page 285. Are there any questions? Mr. Bush?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure that the government would have had more requests than they can fund, but how much of the requests have they been able to fund? If that is a very long answer, Mr. Chairman, then perhaps they can provide it for me in writing, if it's a very long question, but I do want to know something as to the amount in relation to the request. As I said, I don't know if they were listening, but if it's a long question answer, then provide it in writing. If I could get that for me in writing, if it's a long answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that suggestion, member. At this stage, the Scholarship Secretariat is still vetting the applications that have come in, so we are not in a position to state categorically the number of persons that have A, qualified for the scholarships, and B, been considered by Education Council at this time, but that process is still ongoing. But I would give an undertaking that once that is complete, that information with respect to the numbers would be made available to the member.
You're not talking about a long period of time, because
No,
students need to get registered for school.
That process is undergoing as we speak, and the information as it's been processed and kind of vetted by the Secretariat has been gone forward to Education Council for consideration. But yes, we are in the process of looking at those applications with respect to the funding.
Amounts in relation to requests. Have they qualified?
No, you want to request, whether qualified or
Be
not.
qualified? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the qualifications are now, but anyway.
So just for the benefit of the member and the listening public, so what is happening is that the application deadlines have passed. There's been a number of applications that have been put forward to the Secretariat. They're going through to vet those applications to determine whether or not the applicants have met the criteria that is outlined clearly on the website. And of those individuals, then those considerations are being put forward with respect to decisions to be made by Education Council, and then we'd be able to give a better indication once that's done.
And if there are refusals, then Mr. Chairman, if the minister could provide those questions, could provide that information, why they were refused. Yeah. When I say refuse, that's what I meant. However they're refusing them, I don't know how they're refusing them.
Yeah, I mean, we could provide that kind of in a summary report to the member once that process is complete.
No. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bush, you have a question, then following Mr. Bush is Mr. McLean.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Minister, can you please tell us what's being done with the students who are in university? Every year to start back, this has been going on. This is not, once again, throwing it at the foot of the ministers. This is going through, for a long time this has been going on. Every year when you come time to get the money for the young people who are on scholarships, the universities are getting the money late and the children are in limbo sometimes for a month, 2 months before the money is there. And I know because I went through it for 2 years. What is being done to address this problem that we know child A is in university? We know that the money has to be there when they start back school in late August, early September. Some young people have even gone off and the money is still not there. What is being done to address this shortcoming?
The UK holding it up? Sure it does. They don't want to give no scholarships?
Mr. Chair, through you, I would ask the manager of the Scholarship Secretariat to address that specific question that the member has asked.
But they can't, so you might as well tell them so.
My name is Deirdre Seymour. I'm manager of the Scholarship Secretariat, and through the chair, I'd like to answer the question posed by the member. The process is that we get our budget each year anywhere between July and early August, and through the beginning of the summer, end of spring, we facilitate numerous correspondence with all of our students on scholarship to advise when they can expect distributions to be given to them in order to facilitate startbacks and payments of tuition or however their monies are applied. And so students go through a process of submitting grades, results, expense spreadsheets, expense receipts, and we take and we review those to ensure that they've accounted for all the monies they receive. And almost all students are provided with their funds prior to the end of August. The only ones that come in after August in terms of distributions are those who are returning to the UK, because they don't start school until sometimes mid-October. But any students going back to the US have their funds prior to them departing. The only situations that I am aware where students' funds are late or because the student themselves haven't provided sufficient details or submissions in order to facilitate their next distribution. So for example, if a student receives $10,000 in their second distribution, which is normally split over 2 semesters, because our maximum funding, for example, is 20,000 CI per annum. A student will have to provide documentation to provide grade reports, any expenses used from that distribution up to 10,000, and to show proof that that was paid to the university, or however it was applied, whether to housing, travel. And once that has been confirmed and we've reviewed, we then process the next distribution to that student. And we facilitate 2 ways of students having those monies dispersed. Students on an island, we facilitate a deposit process where we actually deposit the funds for them. If they are on island, we also allow them to collect, or they can write in there and provide confirmation that a family member, someone else, can collect on their behalf.
Okay, through you, Chairman. So there is a checklist that you can give me that when parents come to myself and say, I'm waiting on this money for my child, and everything is there's a checklist that I can go to them and say, did you do this? There's such a checklist. Could a copy of that be made available to me, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you
Through
very
you, we
much.
can make a copy of that checklist available.
Even better, as well as giving it to him, just put it on the website so that people can be directed to it.
No, not just website.
Mr. Archer, I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir. Mr. Chairman, sorry. Some of those parents out there don't understand. I'm sorry to say.
Okay, fair enough. But I mean, for those who can.
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
through you, we will definitely look to upload the information to make it readily available to the public.
Furthermore, as Minister of Finance and working along with the Treasury, we will ensure that once we are made aware that these sums are being awaited by the children returning to school, we'll do our best to facilitate payment as quickly as possible.
You hear now,
Mr. McLean, you had a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, you hear that this is not something that is just new, this problem. It seems to be endemic in the system, right, with students. And I mean, I've been hearing that for all the years that I've been here. So maybe you can get it changed, I don't know.
Sometimes it's the students themselves who just wait till the last minute to submit for.
Sometimes there are different reasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are different reasons.
Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if they can tell us how many students are new annually for scholarships? That is, which would include those who are quote unquote replacing those that graduated and finished after their tertiary education.
You want me to say for last year? You want me to give? Through the chair, to answer the member's question, we have a roughly anywhere between 149 to 150 students new, and that's approximately the same drop-off in terms of those finishing and returning back from studies. Some of those return on to do postgraduate study, and so it balances out. But in general, we've run around 140, 155. Last year, we were around 149, 153, somewhere there, and that would be new. So that's around the numbers. We roughly now are running over 400 students annually in terms of total, but when you break it down, you can see about 280, 285 are returning, and then the new tops add up.
So there seems to be a constant.
And those are just the overseas numbers that I'm speaking to.
Yeah, but there seems to be a constant number, and that is the new students replacing on this register those that have finished school. It doesn't increase very much, does it?
Over the last years, it has increased, yes. I'm just speaking like in the last 3 years per se. If you look back over 7 years, we've doubled the number of students we have in overseas study. We've grown from like 225, 227 now to 427. So we've grown, we've doubled the number of students who are studying overseas.
So it's.
And that's been from 2007 to.
So we're right around 1,000 students on scholarship that government helps.
We have over 1,000. We have more like 12, almost 1,200 students, including both local and overseas.
And it doesn't increase much. It's just that people drop off because through the process of attrition, they finish.
Right,
their
but
tertiary.
it gradually increases each year, but not so drastic that
By how
numbers.
much? By how much?
I would be careful to judge, to give a figure, but I would assume, I mean, from my own memory that, and I wouldn't say assume, but I would say from my own memory that you've probably seen maybe the numbers jump by 10 to 15% each year, which is why from 2007, we had over 200 students overseas, and now that's doubled. But that hasn't doubled in a year, that's doubled over 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
All those in favor of TP 30, local and overseas scholarships and bursaries for $10,762,690, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
TP 51, other educational assistance, $249,154 on page 286. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make a correction to that. Actually, it should read other educational and training assistance. For some reason, that didn't get caught in the...
Other educational and training assistance. And training assistance. Thank you. All those in favor of TP 51, other educational and training assistance for $249,154, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. TP 52, Young Nation Builders Scholarships, $1,432,775 on page 286. Are there any questions? All those in favor of TP 52, Young Nation Builders Scholarships, $1,432,775, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
TP 56, Employment Initiatives, $652,037 on page 286. Are there any questions? All those in favor of TP 56, Employment Initiatives, $652,037, standing part of the schedule to the bill.
Okay.
Please say aye.
Aye.
TP 61, Student Enrichment and Support Services, $554,850 on page 287. Are there any questions? All those in favor of TP 61, Student Enrichment and Support Services, $554,850, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Turning to other executive expenses, OE 11, subscription to Caribbean Examinations Council, $13,455 on page 289. All those, OE 11, correct? All those in favor of OE 11, subscription to Caribbean Examinations Council, $13,455, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
OE 12, University of the West Indies membership levy, $160,798 on page 289. Are there any questions, Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can I ask how many students we have at the University of West Indies?
Mr. Chair, through you, I've been advised that we don't have the exact numbers to hand, but I would give an undertaking to get that information to the member.
Mr. McLean, you have a very pensive look on your face.
I'm a little bit. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, why I have that on my face. Maybe I'm disappointed that, an institution of such caliber. And I know we have never used it to our membership, and the question is why not, really? I guess students prefer going to America or the Great Divide, maybe. How many are we allowed to put there with this membership? Because I know it's an allocation. It's on an allocation basis. You remember?
Yeah, Minister Rivers, if Mr. McLean would agree, is that something that we could be provided with in writing for Wednesday morning?
Yes, sir. I've just been advised that there is actually no limit on the number of students we can actually send, but what this levy does, it allows us to, for the students that we do send, we get a 40% discount on the tuition fee for those students.
Mr. Chairman, I hear that, but I thought there was some kind of control, like medicine, you are, because of the demand on the intake and that kind of stuff, you were allowed like a certain amount, and then in engineering it's a certain amount or something because of the demand and stuff. Isn't that how it is? Anyway, don't worry about that, Mr. Chairman, if they can provide it in writing. I'm just concerned as to why we don't utilize the University of West Indies more.
Through the chair, I'd just like to address the member. We do encourage, we do quite a number of community visits into the schools, into the high schools, even into the university. It's here to encourage our study. And it's over time that we're changing the outlook of the community towards studying in Jamaica. Yes, there's been this perception that if I don't get to the UK, if I don't get to Canada, my qualification or the degree that I come home with is not valued. we've had commentary come back from students, for example, who have been told by members in the public or members from private sector that if you go and you get a particular degree from UWI, it's not as valid or it's not as recognized. They know that the doctors are educated there, but perhaps a degree in business is not as standard, has a standing of somebody going into the US or the UK. And we've had to talk to parents and talk to students and say to them, that's just not true. That's not valid. And my daughter goes to UWI, so I know the value of that system, and I've visited in the grounds and the facilities the students are staying in, and the fact that they're safe. We don't have any problems with our girls in Jamaica. We have quite a number of them, not just in UWI, but in UTEC and the other university there, Northern Caribbean. And so we have a number of students. We probably have just under 20 at UWI and a few more, and perhaps 35 to 40 students overall in Jamaica. So the numbers are growing. But we do have other students besides just medicine who are in Jamaica. And we're encouraging that because cost-wise, it allows students to access the government's scholarship funding to go to university without indebting parents into having to facilitate additional monies, remortgaging land, remortgaging houses to facilitate tertiary study. So there's quite a bit of proactive work by the Secretariat to encourage study within the Caribbean. And it's not just UWI and Jamaica, of course, they've got Barbados, they've got Trinidad, they've got the Bahamas as well. And we do have students in Trinidad, and we had some in Bahamas as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because the campus in Jamaica is quite an improvement over the last 20 years. I can say that much. And it's relatively safe. It's very safe. So anyway, one thing is for sure in Jamaica, it's respected is educational campuses. And I think we need to try and get them more because the education is first class. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All those in favor of OE12, University of the West Indies membership levy, $160,798, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Equity Investments, EI12, Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs, $6,271,000 on page 293. Are there any questions? Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, could I get a breakdown of this 6.271 million?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, would the member like a breakdown by entity or a full breakdown of all of the items listed?
But what I'm interested in is I'm not too inquiring about furniture and other items like that. What I'm looking for is construction and how much of this capital is being spent on construction and where it's being spent. They won't back now, is that a year?
Mr. Chair, through you, I will ask the Deputy Chief Officer in the Ministry responsible for education to deal with this capital question.
Mr. Chairman, we have for the John Gray High School, Kristen Saku, Deputy Chief Officer in the Ministry,
For John Gray High School, we have $4 million for the restart of construction of that high school. We also have $1.3 million for existing school building works and upgrades. We also have $28,000 for other minor capital projects.
So there's nothing in here for any classrooms and staff room for the Edna M. Moyle Primary School in Northside?
Mr. Chairman, no. The meeting that we referred to earlier, when I spoke earlier, when we held that meeting, we had already had our discussions with Cabinet to have the budget approved. The member was interested in discussing an expansion to the Edna Moyle School in terms of a hall and...
No hall, 2 classrooms and a staff room.
2 classrooms and 1 staff room. What we've undertaken to do is to have drawings done up, to have those drawings priced, and once we get them priced, we will go back, look at our capital allocation for 14-15, and also for 15-16, present that to the minister to seek her permission to go ahead with the construction project. We have actually already engaged the Public Works Department to get the drawings done. Drawings have been done, were presented to the facilities manager in the ministry last week, and PWD has been given instruction to go to the next phase to have the drawings completed and priced out.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, these drawings are being done with no consultation with the teachers at the school, no consultation with the PTA.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that the drawings have been presented to the principal of the school. I have asked that before we go to any stage beyond this, that the drawings are presented to the PTA as well. And the MLA, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the Deputy Chief Officer is aware that, to my knowledge, the Edna M. Moyle Primary School is the only primary school in the island that doesn't have a staff room.
Correct.
And that no classrooms have been added there in the last 15 years?
Mr. Chairman, honestly, I wouldn't know about that. I would take the member's word for it.
So is there any money in there for a $25,000 bus shelter?
Mr. Chairman, yes, there is.
You're not, through you, Mr. Chairman, you're telling me that there is, in fact, including this minor works, $25,000 for a bus pickup in Northside?
Mr. Chairman, yes, there is.
Do you have a design for the bus pickup in Northside for that $25,000?
Mr. Chairman, sorry, 1 second.
Because I got it.
It's a $3,000 thing, they're spending $25,000 on?
Mr. Chairman, Public Works Department is also doing the design work for that. As a point of clarification, there's a difference between a bus shelter and a bus drop-off area. What we've endeavored to do is a bus drop-off area, which will also provide shelter for the bus. We decided to go down this road because it provides equity for the school in comparison to all of the other primary schools. So I take the member's point in terms of what could be done cheaper, but the design that we are trying to implement, that we have endeavored to once again put before the PTA before we move any further on it, was intended to provide equity.
Mr. Miller, you have an immediate follow-up, or you're gonna
Oh, yes,
you're gonna
sir.
review a document?
Yes, sir, I
There's
have a
another
follow-up.
question.
The bus drop off or pick up, whatever you choose to call it, that is costed at $25,000. Is it to be built out of aluminum and glass? No, no, this one. It can't be serious.
Mr. Chairman, concrete and wood.
Concrete and wood. Does it include planters and seats?
Mr. Chairman, no, sir, it does not.
How is it possible for a pickup area under which a bus would simply drive into, put off the children so they don't get wet? Because I hope this one is connected to the school, because the one I have is out in the playing field, which was the one for 25,000. It's of aluminum and glass. Notice the children got get wet from the school to the bus shelter. They got get wet from the bus shelter to the bus, because the bus can't go into the shelter. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the government would consider giving the PTA the $25,000 to build this. Or how can I better deal with you? Reduce it by 10, give the PTA 15, and we can bill you what we need to bill. Huh? I'll just build a staff room.
Miss,
It is unbelievable, man.
I think all he's asking is whether or not it can be done. I think that was the crux of the question, whether or not you can give them the money directly. So it's a yes or no answer with maybe perhaps a brief explanation as to why not. I don't think it's perhaps Mr. Deputy, is probably you or the chief officer to answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that it is dangerous ground.
No, let's not get philosophical. Let's be specific.
Mr.
Is that
Chairman,
something that
I would not be comfortable in this age of serious audit to get into a practice of directly giving funds to a PTA to do projects that build assets that ultimately belong to the government.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, one.
Mr. Chairman, through you. This is a serious matter, you know, because I cannot comprehend how it is possible for a roof and a couple of PVC poles, or even if you use concrete columns, right, which is going to be 9 feet high with a hip roof bolted on to the school, and 18 to 20 feet long with about 6 concrete columns and some 2x12 with plywood in the middle and some 2x6 rafters, plywood and shingles, can cost $25,000. And why I'm raising this issue, Mr. Chair, because I don't want the money to be wasted on a bus pickup which we know we can bill for 1/3, if not a quarter of that price, and then the children can't get the classrooms or the teacher the staff room because the money's done.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, I'd like to ask the facilities manager to comment.
Thomas E. Banks, Facility and Project Manager for the Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs. In response to the question through you, Chair, this is the cost that we were provided by Public Works for the construction of a bus shelter and drop-off, which includes a walkway that connects the bus shelter and drop-off to the school. It actually contains a bit more than Mr. Miller actually described. It's actually 12 feet high. It's 8, 12, or 14-inch concrete columns connected by a roof that's basically designed to hurricane standards. It's trellises that basically come down to about 8 feet to protect the bus as well from the elements. On one side, I think it goes straight to the ground because of the location to the sea and how we're trying to protect it. And like I said, these are costs that were provided to us by Public Works. They've built quite a few of them in the past, so we must take their professional and technical advice on this.
I know who's talking about it.
Thank you, Mr. Banks.
Mr. Chairman, suffice it to say that I will be scrutinizing what is going to be done, because this business now about walkway is a new twist, because there's no need for a walkway. Because I took the facilities manager and the deputy chief officer there and suggested how it could be done without a walkway, and they agreed with me on the site that that was the way to do it. Now, if we're going to build a 12-foot walkway to get to the parking lot, to build a pickup for the bus, then I can see it'll probably wind up costing $125,000 by the time you all are done. But I'll be watching it very closely, so.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All those in favor of EI 12?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one question.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Suku. Mr. Suku?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the Bontown Primary School cafeteria and the hall are both in need of upgrades, because I think the hall, they've outgrown the hall, and there's no place for the entire school to assemble for meetings and so on, and the cafeteria as well needs to be upgraded. I know that there's nothing in this budget now for major works at that school to deal with those two issues, but are we in a position to at least start looking at that problem so that perhaps next year, if budget permits, we can go ahead and address those issues?
Mr. Chair, through you, I've been advised that with respect to the Bontown Primary School, there are drawings that have been done and there's an estimate, and it's really a matter of whether or not we can get the funding allocated to our capital vote in order to carry out the project. But if that's something that we'll be able to have, we will take that forward in the next budget year.
Thank you. All those in favor of EI 12, Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs, 6,271,000. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of appropriations to the Minister for Education, Employment and Gender Affairs. We do have a few matters remaining in Finance Committee, but at this time, I'll thank the Minister and her staff, and I'll invite them to leave. They're free to leave at this time. We do have some matters to finalize, but they're free to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd also definitely like to echo the appreciation of the ministry staff for sticking it out this late hour and to participating in Finance Committee and helping to clarify the questions that the members have had. So thank you very much for your participation.
Members, there are a few more procedural matters to a few more procedural matters, so let's get right to them. Pursuant to Standing Order 64, subsection 1, I shall put the following questions to the committee that the schedule stand part of the bill. Yes, sir, I do. I'll ask the, yeah, thank you. Start Just cup in a bag.
I'm afraid to go down the back. I'm afraid to double.
I should have just given her these at that time too. I should have just given her these. All right, cool, yeah, okay. Good, thank you.
So who come in this time and
Start with that, Christian.
wash your too.
There you go, Ken.
Oh, Jesus. A separate one?
Gentlemen, what you've just received is a copy of, or the answer to a question Mr. Miller asked a few days ago during Finance Committee as to what is the total cost of the security guard services that are being provided to the Cayman Islands government. So this handout provides the cost for each agency, and I think there's a total cost at the bottom there of some $2,009,623.88. So the total cost has been provided, and there's a breakdown as to each agency and what where the service is provided, the name of the agency, the amount included in this particular budget, the name of the ministry, as well as the role of the security officers and what service they're providing and where they're located. So as I've said before, the total cost is $2,009,623.88.
Mr. Chair?
That's on page. That's
Mr.
on
Chairman?
page. Yes, Mr. Tibbetts.
Through you, reason why I am making a comment here, sir, is because my ministry being in charge of facilities management doesn't by any means mean that I have any direct influence or relationship to all of these, but it will be to some of them. And what I want to suggest, and I don't know what Mr. Miller's thoughts are, but I would suggest that there be some professional input into this to decide on really, given the specific locations, what level of security is required, whereby we can develop a policy which everybody will have to go by. Because I don't suspect that that's the case with this. I think at best it's ad hoc. So I am quite prepared with, if everybody's in agreement, to move towards getting that advice and getting a policy developed and type of thing, but not something that's going to cost us a fortune to add to this cost there now. But I am pretty sure that we can get it done in fairly good order. The other thing we're going to have to look at, Mr. Chair, which when I heard the member talking about it first before now, we also need to understand and determine what contracts exist. And well, the who is, yes, but that's another matter, but I'm just trying to look at the general picture. What contracts exist and the term of the contracts and everything else. So, but first of all, I think we have to get that policy, then we can relate the policy to what exists and to see whenever the contracts are up, what changes need to be made if necessary. If the member is content with that, I will certainly undertake to make sure that it's done. And keep the member, well, keep all of us up to speed as to what is happening.
Mr. Chairman, the purpose of me asking the questions was to bring focus to this, because I've been concerned about it for several years. And when we see we spending $423,600 for these services at the government administration building, and when you go there, they're crawling over each other. One is opening the front door for you, one is telling you to sign a book, the other one is taking you to the little gate, and then there's somebody else on the inside of the gate to open that gate, then there's somebody else. And I will be comfortable with the commitment given by the minister responsible for the facilities to develop a policy, because I think something needs to be done to get some control over this, because I see here about providing $200,000 for the Minister of Health, and part of what he's providing is security for the Old Man Bay playing field, and I can't think of any reason to have security in the Old Man Bay playing field. No? But this is budgeted for 2014-15. Because I certainly don't want a situation there where some security person comes around at 9 o'clock at night and locks the gate, and when the ladies who walk there at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, the gate is locked and can't get in. So I don't think we need to provide any security, you know. And some of the things here needs to be rationalized, but I'm comfortable with the Minister for Planning and Facilities taking it on and developing a policy with a view of reducing this, so I can get the money for the 2 classrooms for the Aidan Mile School.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the other document that you received is also in response to a query from Mr. Miller that has to do with his precise query was how much money is being given to certain of these NGOs, yes, NGOs. So what you have here is a document that shows the appropriations to NGOs by each ministry. So you can easily look at it and see what appropriations your ministry have with respect to NGOs or NGS, non-governmental output suppliers. Okay. So it's self-explanatory. It's easy to see, and there's a subtotal for each ministry. So without further delay, I would like to proceed to the other procedural matters that we have to deal with at this time. So all those in favor of the schedule, standing part of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor of Clause 2, standing part of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Clause 1 to the bill reads as follows. This law may be cited as the appropriations July 2014 to June 2015 law. 2014, all those in favor of Clause 1, standing part of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Clause 1 therefore stands part of the bill. Clause 2 to the bill reads as follows. The Cabinet may incur executive expenses, acquire executive assets, make equity investments or loans, and undertake borrowing for the financial year ending 30th June 2015 in the amount and for the respective purposes set forth in the schedule. All those in favor of Clause 2, standing part of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. Clause 2 stands part of the bill. The proposed long title of the bill is a bill for a law to appropriate executive financial transactions for the financial year ending 30th June 2015. All those in favor of the long title that I have just read, standing part of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The title stands part of the bill. Pursuant to Standing Order 64, subsection 7, I shall put the question that I do report the bill to the House. All those in favor of the bill being reported to the House, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The bill will be reported to the House. Honorable members, the committee will meet again on Wednesday, the 25th of June, starting 9 a.m. to review the report of the committee and the minutes of the committee's deliberations. Once these have been approved by the committee, the reporting aspects will be made to the House, and once that is done, the third reading of the bill will be considered by the House. Let us all bear in mind that the government must have an appropriation law that is gazetted by midnight, 30th June 2014, in order for the government to properly incur expenditure on 1 July 2014 to start the new fiscal year. I would like to thank all honorable members for their assistance during the committee stage of the bill, and we will reconvene again on Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. Thank you all very much. Good night, and God bless.